Hey everyone, welcome back to the Paranormal M channel. It's me again, someone who genuinely loves what I do and is always excited to be here sharing my paranormal experiences from all around the world. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. How's everyone doing? Are you ready to dive into today's stories together? And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Okay, so let me take you back to when I was a kid. One of my closest friends growing up, let's call her Brianna, lived in this part of town that everyone whispered about. The kind of place where the older neighbors would lower their voices and say things like, "That land has a history." People claimed it used to be sacred ground, and whether that was true or just local legend, the reputation stuck. Now, Brianna loved talking about how her house was haunted. She'd casually mention hearing footsteps when no one was upstairs, or doors clicking, or that weird feeling like someone was standing just behind you. Stuff like that. But honestly, from my perspective, her house was amazing. It sat in one of the prettiest, most established neighborhoods, big old trees, wide streets, the kind of homes that felt fancy without trying too hard. And her mom, let's call her Mrs. Delaney, was basically the gold standard of cozy. She decorated for every holiday like it was her personal mission, and she baked like a professional. I'm talking warm cinnamon smells, pies cooling on the counter, little seasonal decorations everywhere. And she threw those fun, wholesome parties where you'd eat too much and laugh until your cheeks hurt. So yeah, I loved going over there. Brianna always had people over, study sessions, birthdays, random sleepovers. I probably spent as much time in that house as I did in my own for a while. But the night I'm about to tell you about, it changed my whole vibe. It was one of those packed sleepovers. No idea what we were celebrating, but I remember her dad was out of town, and that mattered later. We'd done the usual, movies, snacks, giggling about dumb stuff, whispering long after we promised we'd go to sleep. Her bedroom was wall-to-wall air mattresses. Seriously, there wasn't a visible inch of carpet. I ended up on one right by the door. And the door was open, because in that house, it basically always was at night. At the top of the stairs, just out in the hallway, they kept this big industrial fan running, like a loud, constant hum. Brianna's family said it helped cover up the house noises, because apparently the house would creak and pop and make sounds at night that freaked them out. Personally, I hated the thing. It wasn't soothing, it was just loud, like sleeping next to a small airplane engine. So while everyone else is out cold, I'm lying there staring into listening to that endless droning, trying to fall asleep without losing my mind. And this was before everyone had a phone glued to their hand, so I couldn't even check the time. I couldn't see her clock from where I was either. I just had this sense that it was late, or maybe early. Time gets weird when you're stuck awake. At some point, I heard Mrs. Delaney come out of her bedroom, and I know it was her because her room and Brianna's room faced each other across that little hallway. The fan was in between, so you could still hear footsteps moving around it. And again, Brianna's dad wasn't home. Everyone else was asleep in the room with me, and the sound was so clear it snapped my attention immediately. I heard her walk past the fan, and then start down the stairs. And those stairs had two steps that always squeaked. Not a little creak, like a sharp, unmistakable squeal. Didn't matter where you stepped, those two steps betrayed you every time. I heard them, exactly like always. So in my head, I'm like, okay, she's up. Maybe she's getting water. Maybe she's starting breakfast. And the second my brain went there, I got stuck on it. Because when I tell you this woman made the best pancakes, listen. She did chocolate chip pancakes that were crispy on the edges and soft in the middle. And she'd do this perfect little dusting of powdered sugar, like she was seasoning food with love. Sometimes bacon on the side, sometimes fruit. Always warm, always comforting. So now I'm wide awake, not scared, just hungry and excited. Like, yes, breakfast is coming. This is the prize for surviving the loud fan all night. Time passes. More time than feels normal. And I start thinking, shouldn't she have come back up by now? Usually she'd come upstairs, gently wake everyone, all cheerful and bright like she hadn't been awake half the night. So I shift around on my air mattress until I can see the top of the stairs clearly, just watching and waiting. And then the light changes. That soft, early morning glow starts creeping in, through the blinds in Brianna's room and the window downstairs, turning everything kind of warm and golden. You know that peaceful look a house gets when the day is just beginning? I'm staring at the stairs, still waiting. And then my stomach drops, because I see Mrs. Delaney step out of her bedroom again. Again. I watched her come out, like it was the first time. I watched her turn, and I watched her walk down the stairs. And my whole body went cold because I knew she had already gone down. She hadn't come back up, not once, not even a little. And I don't mean, I think. I mean I'd been half awake, hyper-aware, tracking sounds because I couldn't sleep. I heard her footsteps. I heard those 2 squeaky steps. I heard her go down. And I'd been waiting for her to come back up ever since. But she never did. So how was she doing it again? I'm sitting there frozen, like my brain is trying to explain it in real time. Like, maybe I imagined it. Maybe I drifted off. Maybe anything. And right then, right as she's going down those steps, I finally smell it. The pancakes. The sweet, warm, buttery smell of breakfast. Chocolate and bacon and that cozy kitchen scent that fills the whole house. And what messed with me the most was I hadn't smelled any of that earlier when I thought I heard her downstairs. It was only now, when I was watching her walk down for the second time, that the smell actually hit. I stayed completely still. Like if I moved, it would confirm something I didn't want to know. A little while later, Mrs. Delaney came back up the stairs, cheerful, normal, calling softly to wake us up for breakfast like nothing strange had happened at all. And that was it. No jump scare. No dramatic ending. Just breakfast. Just a normal morning. But I'll tell you this. After that night, I started noticing things in that house more and more. Little moments that felt off. Sounds. Timing. That same cold rush I'd felt watching her walk down those stairs twice. And I still don't have a clean explanation for it. All I know is, I was there. I was awake. I heard what I heard, and I saw what I saw. And if you ever want to hear the other stuff that happened after that, yeah, I've got more. I used to be the biggest skeptic. Like, I'll happily watch ghost shows at midnight. I'll jump at every horror movie scare. But believe in any of it? No, not me. I always had some practical explanation ready. A drafty old house, a settling floorboard, people reading too much into shadows. And then my husband got sick. It was back in 2021, right in the thick of the COVID surge. We'd been married almost 3 decades. He'd lived with asthma for years, but that night it wasn't just a bad attack. It was terrifying. He couldn't catch his breath, and before the paramedics even got him out the door, he went into cardiac arrest. I'll never forget the number because the medics said it out loud, like he was anchoring himself. They did CPR for nearly 20 minutes. They got his heart back in the ER, and then, nothing. 2 months of a coma. 2 months of me sitting beside machines, holding his hand, hearing doctors gently suggest things no wife wants to hear. Life support, quality of life, if he wakes up. But he did wake up. Not the same, not fully. He survived, but the oxygen loss left its mark. He's in a wheelchair now, mostly bedbound, and his short-term memory, it comes and goes like water through your fingers. Still, he can talk. He can laugh. He knows me. He reacts to the people around him. He's here. When he first came home, I moved into my daughter Marissa's place for a few months because I needed help caring for him. She'd bought this house a few years earlier, and she used to say, completely serious, that it was haunted. She even smudged the place with sage more than once. I teased her for it constantly. I'd tell her, "Mari, your house isn't haunted. It's old, that's all." Then my husband started seeing people who weren't there. The first time, it was dinner. Just a normal night, plates clinking, kids talking, the TV murmuring from another room. I'd pulled his wheelchair up next to the table so he could eat with us. Out of nowhere, he got irritated, like genuinely annoyed. He says, "Can you tell that woman to sit down? She's making me crazy." I blinked. "What woman?" He pointed toward the kitchen. "That old lady. She keeps walking back and forth like she owns the place." There was nobody in the kitchen. No footsteps. No shadow. Nothing. Marissa and the kids were right there. No one else was even in the house. My first instinct wasn't fear. It was logic. Medication. Brain injury. A side effect. Something with his new prescriptions. I did what I usually do when he gets confused. I went along gently. "Okay," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'll ask her." And I remember thinking, this is just the injury. It has to be. But it didn't stop. About 2 weeks later, he screamed for me from the bedroom, one of those screams that yanks your heart right out of your chest. I ran in, expecting he'd fallen or pulled at a tube or anything physical. He was sitting upright, shaking. He said, "Tell them to stop staring at me." "Who?" I asked. He swallowed and whispered, "The old woman, a man, and a boy with a crutch." My skin went cold, because again, the room was empty. And he wasn't describing some vague shapes. He was describing people, like they were standing there beside his bed, just watching him. "They don't talk?" I asked, even though I felt ridiculous saying it out loud. He shook his head. "They just stare, like I'm not supposed to be here." And here's where it gets worse, because the next one didn't feel like the house. During that same period, I was remodeling our own home to make it wheelchair accessible. Wider doorways, a bedroom on the first floor, rails in the bathroom, the whole thing. At the same time, my youngest brother Mateo was in hospice. He was fading fast. Every day felt like borrowed time. One afternoon, Marissa came with me to the house to help paint the new bedroom. I left my husband in the kitchen with the TV on, thinking he'd be fine for a bit. Then he started yelling. Not irritated yelling, panic. I ran in and he was crying, like full-on tears, terrified. He kept saying, "They want me to go with them. They want me to go." I grabbed his hands. "Who wants you to go? Who?" He looked right past me, like he was watching someone in the room, and he said, "Your brother Leo, and your dad." My stomach dropped so hard I felt sick, because my father died when I was little, and my brother Leo, my older brother, had passed years ago. I didn't even think. I just started grilling him, like I could corner reality into behaving. "What do they look like? Where are they standing? What are they saying?" And he described my dad. Not vaguely, not like a guess. He described him in a way that made my throat tighten, little details that matched what I remembered. But my husband had never met my father, not once. And I realized, with this awful, dawning clarity, I don't even keep many photos out. He wouldn't have had that image stored anywhere. He said they were laughing at him, like they were teasing him, and it scared him. And suddenly my skepticism didn't feel smart anymore. It felt flimsy, like paper in the rain. I got angry. Not at my husband, never at him. At whatever it was. I actually raised my voice into the empty kitchen like a crazy person. "Stop it," I said. "Do not scare him. If you're here, fine, visit. But you are not taking my husband." I remember begging too, my voice breaking, saying out loud that I thought maybe they were meant for Mateo, not for my husband, because Mateo was only a few blocks away, and he was the one who was truly near the edge. And then, this is the part that still gets me. My husband suddenly relaxed, like a storm passed. He blinked, wiped his face, and said, "They left." And he never saw my father or my brother again. 2 days later, Mateo passed away. I don't even know what to do with that. I still don't. There was another time too, months later, when we were in the ER overnight because he'd yanked out his feeding tube. We were only supposed to be there for a quick replacement, but you know how ERs go. One test becomes 5. They needed a urine sample, and my husband can't go on command. He wears briefs. A tech came in with a catheter, and I could tell immediately she was unsure, but before I could properly intervene, the bag started filling with blood. I called for the doctor. More tests, more waiting. My husband somehow stayed in a decent mood, cracking little jokes, smiling at me like he was trying to lighten my fear. And then he turned his head to the far side of the room and said, clear as day, "Hi, Mom." I froze. "Who are you talking to?" "My mom," he said, casual as anything. His mother, Helena, had been gone for 20 years. And I felt that same flare of panic, the same thought clawing up from the back of my mind. Is she here for him? Is this how it happens? Then he frowned slightly and said, "She says you never really liked her." But I didn't laugh. I whispered into the air, speaking to a person I couldn't see. "Helena, I respected you. I did. Please don't take him. Please." My husband blinked slowly and said, "She's gone." And then he drifted off to sleep. He was released later that night. No great spiritual showdown, no dramatic ending, just us, going home again, carrying the weirdness with us like extra luggage. And now, here I am, this person who used to roll her eyes at the word haunted, sitting with questions I never thought I'd seriously ask. Why did the family in my daughter's house only stare? Why didn't they speak to him? But my dead relatives and his mother actually communicated? Are there different kinds of whatever this is? And the scariest question, the one I hate admitting, is he in danger? I was raised Catholic. I'm not the kind of person who goes to church every Sunday, but those old ideas stick like burrs. Exorcisms, spirits that aren't friendly, the fear that something could attach itself to someone vulnerable. And my husband is vulnerable. He already escaped death once. Sometimes I try to tell myself it's the brain injury, hallucinations, trauma, chemistry. That explanation still sits on the table, and part of me clings to it because it feels safer. But then I remember the details, the timing, the way he looked through me at things I couldn't see. And recently, our cat, Pippa, died. 2 weeks ago. I was heartbroken, more than I expected to be. She'd been with us forever, this little warm presence always curled nearby. And my husband, half asleep one afternoon, smiled toward the foot of the bed and said, "Oh, there you are." I asked, "Who?" He said, like it was the most natural thing in the world, "Pippa." And I just stood there, holding my breath, feeling that strange blend of comfort and terror. Because on one hand, what a beautiful thought that our pets might still be near us somehow. And on the other, if any of this is real, if he truly sees who he says he sees, then I'm living in a world I spent my whole life insisting didn't exist. And I don't know if that means I should be afraid or grateful. Hey. Okay. Before I say any of this, just hear me out for a second. I know how this is going to sound. I know. Even people who are into weird stuff are going to read this and go, yeah, sure. But I'm not trying to be funny, and I'm not trying to impress anybody. I don't even post in places like this. I'm only talking because I'm worn down, and I genuinely don't know what else to do. So, I live up on a mountain in Southern California. Not a cabin in the woods fantasy situation, more like rough land, trailers, pine trees, long roads, dark skies. I've been up here for a few years now, and for most of that time I've been dealing with things that don't fit into any normal category. It started small. The kind of thing you can talk yourself out of. That feeling like you're being watched when you're alone. The hair-raising silence right before dusk. And then, this part sounds like those old mountain stories, hearing your name being called when nobody's there. But that's honestly the gentle version. That's the tip of it. The truth is, my property feels like a hot spot, like it's marked on some invisible map for something. I can't even tell you what. Spirits? Something non-human? Some dimensional overlap? I don't know. And I'm not even saying it's just one thing. Sometimes it feels like multiple types of weird all stacked on top of each other. And I'm at the point where I don't want theories anymore. I want someone, an actual team, to come out here and test the area. Measure things. Record things. Tell me I'm wrong, or tell me what it is. I just need something solid. Let me explain what's been happening. First, the whispers. They happen in both trailers, the one I live in and the other one out back. Not just at night, not just when I'm half asleep. I've heard them in the morning, broad daylight, like 7 a.m. when I'm making coffee. And I'm not talking about the wind or the pipes. I mean whispers, the kind that make you freeze because your brain goes, that was close to me. If I tried to list everything I've heard, we'd be here all day. Then there's this frequency thing. High-pitched tones, shifts in pitch, like something is tuning itself. I started messing with a little radio scanner a while back because I kept noticing strange interference up here. At first it was just curiosity, like, maybe it's the mountain, maybe it's the towers. But then it started to feel like, this is going to sound insane. It started to feel like something was trying to respond. And the part that made me stop, the part that made me throw the whole thing out, was when I swear to you, I could hear my own thought pattern in the static sometimes. Like the noise would line up with what I was thinking in a way that made my stomach drop. Like something was scanning me, reading me. I got so freaked out I dumped the radio in the trash and never touched another one on this property again. That was maybe 2 or 3 years ago now. I'm still not over it. And then there's what I've seen. UFOs, yeah, I'm saying it. I see them constantly, like every week or two. And I'm not talking about a light in the sky that might be a plane. These move wrong. They'll sit there like a star, then slide sideways, then blink out like someone flipped a switch. My neighbors, Seth and Maribel, have seen them too. It's not just me being dramatic. They've stood out there with me and watched it happen, and we just look at each other like, what are we supposed to do with this? But the thing that really messed me up, like really, was the towels. I know how that sounds. And I see, up ahead, floating shapes moving toward me. At first, my brain goes, plastic bags, wind, debris. That's what you tell yourself. But then they get closer, and I realize they're the size of big bath towels, like full-on towels, folding, drifting, kind of rippling. And the worst part was, they had these small face shapes in them. Not like a human face, more like a little mask or a little knot of features right where you'd expect to see birds if you were looking up. It was clear. No blur, no fog, no trick lighting. I stood there staring like my body forgot how to move, and these things just floated toward me like they were curious, or like they knew I was looking. I got home and sat there with all the lights on, just trying to make my brain accept what I saw. But even that wasn't the most disturbing thing. The most disturbing thing was the giant. I don't even like saying this out loud. I was coming down the higher road one day, the one that overlooks my property. You can see the pine line and the slope down to where my trailers sit. And I saw something big near my land. It looked green, like it was made of forest, but also mechanical, like a robotic shape wearing the idea of trees. Tall, too tall, and it looked like it was holding something, like a tool or a device, like it was doing work. And here's the part that still makes me feel sick. The moment I noticed it, it reacted like it realized I could see it. It turned, not like an animal turns, like a machine swivels. And then it did this fast, impossible movement where it kind of phased back toward my property, like it folded into the space near this huge pine tree I have, like it stepped out of the angle of reality. I stood there frozen, honestly thinking, if I run, will it chase me? If I stay, will it come back? I've heard people talk about DMT experiences, mechanical beings, elf-like things, mantis-looking entities. I'm not saying I was on anything. I don't do that. But what I saw reminded me of those descriptions so much it makes my skin crawl. And yeah, there have been other moments too. I've seen bushes and trees shift shape in ways that don't make sense. Not like wind moved it. More like the pattern changed, like the structure got rewritten for a second and then snapped back. Like the land itself is unstable. I've also had this repeated thought that flight paths might be part of it. This is real. My place sits right between two major airline routes. On one side, planes move in a steady line, one direction, like clockwork. On the other side, another steady stream in the opposite direction. It's constant, civilian, cargo, sometimes stuff that looks government or military. And I keep wondering if elevation plus whatever's going on up here makes it worse. Like I'm sitting in the middle of some corridor. I'm telling you all this because I'm done. I'm tired. I'm drained. I'm putting the property up for rent because I can't handle it anymore. I'm moving back toward the city because at least when you're surrounded by people, it's harder for the dark to feel so personal. But before I go, I need help. I need someone who actually investigates this kind of thing to come out here. Someone with equipment. Someone who's not just going to make fun of it. I'm not asking anyone to automatically believe me. I'm asking for someone to take it seriously enough to check. Because whatever this is, it's been living alongside me for too long. And I don't want to live with it anymore. So, I grew up in this modest little apartment with my mom and my 4 siblings. It was always loud, always busy. One of those homes where you're never really alone, even when you want to be. The apartment had this long, enclosed balcony that ran almost the entire length of it. It was actually pretty spacious. There was furniture out there and everything, but we barely used it. It just kind of existed, like an extra room we forgot we had. Then one day I begged my mom for a pet, and somehow I ended up with a tiny kitten. We named him Miso. Miso was adorable, but oh my god, at night, a menace. He'd sprint around, knock things over, meow like he was giving a concert. Nobody could sleep, so we started putting him out on the balcony at night so the rest of us could finally get some rest. And it worked, until it didn't. One night, I'm talking like 2:40 in the morning, that weird hour where the whole world feels paused, I woke up suddenly. No nightmare, no sound, nothing. Just this strong urge to check on Miso, like my body decided for me. So I got up and groggy, and I walked over to the balcony door. The curtains were drawn, and I remember feeling like I didn't want to make noise. I pulled the curtain back just a little and peered through the glass. Miso was easy to spot because he had that bright ginger-orange fur that practically glows even in dim light. And I saw him sitting way at the far end of the balcony, in the corner furthest from my room. But he wasn't curled up. He wasn't playing. He was sitting perfectly still, just staring upward at the corner near the ceiling, not blinking, not moving. And I stood there thinking, what are you looking at? Then, without warning, Miso stood up. His whole body puffed out like a bottle brush, the way cats do when they're absolutely terrified. He arched his back, his fur spiked up, and for half a second it looked like he was frozen in panic. And then, he bolted. He ran the entire length of that balcony straight toward my side, like something had chased him, and he shot under the couch that was pushed against the wall near my room. I swear, the speed of it, the urgency, it didn't look like normal kitten zoomies. It looked like fear, and I just stood there, heart pounding, staring through the glass like I forgot how to breathe. I didn't go outside. I didn't open the door. I didn't call his name. I backed away, climbed into bed, pulled the blanket over my head like a little kid, and just stayed there until I fell asleep again. And after that, yeah, Miso never slept on that balcony at night again. Not once. But the part that really messed with me is what happened after. Because not long after that night, weird things started happening in the apartment. Things that didn't feel like, oh, maybe the wind did it, or maybe I imagined it. It felt like something was sharing the space with us. One evening, we were eating dinner, and the curtains in the living room shifted, like someone had brushed past them. There were no open windows, no fan, nothing. At night, I'd be lying in bed and feel the mattress dip, like someone had sat down, or worse, like something had laid down beside me. You know that subtle movement when weight transfers across a bed? That. My sister Hannah had it the worst. She'd hear knocking, sharp, deliberate knocks, from one room. She'd go to check, and as soon as she reached the door, the knocking would start in another room, like it was leading her around on purpose. My brother Yusuf woke up one night and swore he saw the outline of a figure beside him in bed, like someone was sleeping there. He said it wasn't a shadow from the hallway. It had shape, it had weight, and he felt sick just talking about it. My mom told us she'd wake up feeling something tugging at her blanket, like hands trying to pull it away. She's not the kind of person who scares easily, so hearing her say that in a steady voice, that was enough. I went into the living room one night to pray. The apartment was quiet, lights low, and I started reciting Quran out loud. I wasn't even thinking about anything paranormal. I was just trying to focus. But as soon as I began reciting, I saw the couch cushion shift, like someone sat down, like the cushion compressed under invisible weight. I froze. Every part of me wanted to stop, but I forced myself to keep going, even though my throat felt dry and my hands were trembling. I kept my eyes down and just continued reciting like I didn't see it. And later, in my room, I started noticing shadows, movement in the corners at night that didn't match cars outside or streetlight patterns. Just a glide, a flicker, like something passing where nothing should be. And here's the thing, we didn't have these problems before. It felt like, after that night on the balcony, something had noticed us, or we'd noticed it. And once that door opened, it didn't close. But when we moved out of that apartment, everything stopped. Just stopped. Like someone shut off a radio that had been playing in the background for months. No knocks, no shifting curtains, no weight on the bed, nothing. And that's why, when people ask me what I think it was, I always hesitate, because I know how it sounds. But I also know what we lived through. We're Muslim, and we believe in jinn, creations of God that exist alongside us. We can't see them in their natural form, but they can see us. And we're not meant to interact with them. But like humans, they're not all the same. Some mind their own business. Some are curious. Some are harmful. Some are downright malicious. We're taught that they're more active after sunset, and that's part of why we're advised to close windows and doors at night. Not out of superstition, but as a kind of spiritual caution. Like, don't leave things open. Don't invite attention. And we also believe they can take forms, animals, people, but that something will often feel off. The eyes, the expression, the energy. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know what Miso saw in that corner, but I've never forgotten the way his whole body reacted, like he was looking at something I couldn't see. And I think that night was the first time the apartment showed us we weren't alone. Okay, so I need you to hear me out, because I know how this sounds. But I swear on everything, I've had 2 different presences, spirits, whatever you want to call them, that seem to think my house is their personal lost and found. And before you picture some creaky old horror movie house, this is the house I grew up in. I know the sounds. I know the corners. I know what normal feels like here. That's why it messes with me so much when something clearly not normal happens. So the first weird chapter started a few years back, right after my husband, Evan, and I moved in together. I was out antique shopping, because I'm a sucker for old furniture, and I found this gorgeous vintage vanity. Like heavy wood, pretty details, the kind of thing that feels like it has a story baked into it. I brought it home and put it in what was, at the time, our little pet room. And then, my stuff started vanishing in a way that didn't make sense. It was mostly my nose jewelry. I'd go to sleep with one of those clicker rings in, one of the kind you have to actually work at to open. And I'd wake up and it would be gone. Not in the bed, not on the floor, not caught in my hair, just gone. And the part that made my stomach twist? A couple days later, it would show up sitting neatly on top of that vanity, in a totally different room. Sometimes they never came back at all. Sometimes they'd return like nothing happened, almost like someone was messing with me, just to see if I'd notice. At one point, I had this little glass dish, super cute, held all my extra rings, and it disappeared. I tore that room apart. I mean, I checked drawers, baskets, under furniture, the whole thing. A few days later, it was back on the vanity, but in a different spot than where I always kept it, like it had been placed there on purpose. I tried to be logical, truly. I told myself maybe I was knocking things loose in my sleep. Except, no. These rings weren't the kind you casually lose. You don't accidentally sleep remove something you basically have to pry open. Eventually, I got so irritated that I started running my mouth, mostly to Evan, but sometimes out loud, like, "Okay, funny, give me my stuff back." I was snarky about it. I'm not proud. And then one morning, the spirit, if that's what it was, decided to humble me. My keys disappeared right before work. I dumped my bag out on the floor. I shook it. I checked every pocket, every zipper, every little hidden compartment. Nothing. I was already running late, so my coworker, Jade, picked me up since I'm only a few minutes from my job. I even checked my bag again at work, like, maybe I'm being dramatic. Still nothing. Later that night, Evan, sweet, calm, diplomatic Evan, just stood in the kitchen and said, very politely, "If you have her keys, could you please give them back?" And I'm not kidding. When we went out to grab groceries and make replacement copies, I reached into my bag for the spare keys, and my fingers touched my entire keychain. Everything. House keys, work fob, little keyring charm. All of it. Just sitting in there like it had been there all along. I swear my blood ran cold. Because I know what an empty purse feels like. I checked it like 5 times. Not long after that, I ended up seeing a woman who claimed she could clear the energy. I don't know what she did, and I'm not saying everyone should run out and do that, but after that, things settled down. Like the house exhaled. That phase ended. Which should have been the end of the story, right? Except it wasn't. About a month ago, Evan grabbed our headlamp to mess with the furnace. Next day, it's missing. We both looked everywhere. 2 days later, it's suddenly sitting out in the open, like impossible to miss. I remember saying, "Oh, you found it." And he just stared at me and went, "I thought you found it." Then the house started doing that thing where it sounds like someone is nearby. Floor creaks, like footsteps shifting weight just outside the room. You look up expecting to see someone, and there's nobody. Not even the dog. Nothing. The moment that really got me, though, was my grandma. She was babysitting our newborn, tiny little thing, only a few months old, and she felt someone tap her on the shoulder. She turned around, ready to scold one of us for sneaking up on her. And no one was there. And my grandma is not someone who chases spooky explanations. She's very practical, very faith-based, the type who'd normally brush this off. So for her to even bring it up, and to look genuinely unsettled, that hit me hard. And then we started seeing the little stuff. Movement in the corner of your eye. Both of us. The kind that makes you glance toward the hallway thinking, "Was that you?" And the other person goes, "No, I thought that was you." Twice, one of my kids' balls rolled across the floor with nobody near it. Not kicked, not bumped, just rolled. Slow and steady, like it had a destination. But the thing that pushed me over the edge happened right around the holidays. I was hosting Christmas Eve, so you know that deep clean frenzy where your house is spotless in a way it never is any other time. I stripped all the cushion covers and pillow covers from the sunroom, washed everything, and I was doing my final putback before bed. 2 matching throw pillows usually sit on 2 chairs out there. I remember them clearly because I'm the one who bought them, and I'm weird about symmetry. I go to put the covers back on, and I only have 1 pillowcase. At first I thought, fine, I left the other one in the dryer, no big deal. But then I went to grab the second pillow and no pillow, just gone, like the chair had never had it. So now I'm standing there in this perfectly clean house, holding 1 pillowcase like an idiot, and I can feel myself getting mad in that helpless way. I made Evan get out of bed and help me search. We checked the dryer. We checked closets, laundry baskets, behind chairs, under beds, the guest room, the baby's room, everything. There were no piles, no clutter, nowhere for it to hide. And here's the part that makes me feel like I'm losing it. The pillowcase disappeared from the dryer, and the pillow disappeared from the chair the same day. Like someone took the set. Days later, it still hasn't turned up. I even went through my phone and found a picture from earlier where you can clearly see both pillows. So no, I'm not misremembering. No Mandela effect. There were 2. Now there's 1. And there's this weird tension in the house like it's waiting for me to react. And honestly, I don't even know what I'm asking for anymore. Validation? A rational explanation? Someone to tell me I'm not nuts? Because what are the odds that I had one thing attached to an antique before? And now there's another one here doing the same hide and return routine. I do collect antiques. I've got some old oddities, nothing extreme, but enough that you could argue I'm basically inviting history into my house. And lately it feels like something in that history is getting a little too comfortable. So yeah, that's where I'm at. So, last night I'm in bed, fully in my little cozy zone, just watching this show and trying to wind down. Nothing dramatic, nothing weird. And then out of nowhere, at 12:34 a.m., I get a text notification from my mom. Which, okay, already odd. My mom doesn't text me in the middle of the night unless something's wrong. But what really threw me was the notification itself. We use iMessage, and I know what an iPhone notification looks like. This one looked off, like it didn't belong on my phone. It was split weirdly across the screen, almost like the message was cut in half horizontally. I could see the top part clearly, but the bottom half was blurred, like my phone was trying to hide it. And before I could even blink and be like, "What is this?" it just vanished. Gone. I checked the Messages app immediately. Nothing there. No new message, no weird draft, no delivered, nothing. But in that tiny second before it disappeared, I caught part of what it said. It was like, "Riley, come out here and check." That's it. Just that. No full sentence, no second text, no explanation. Just enough to feel deliberate, and not enough to make sense. And here's the layout, just so you get why this freaked me out. My room is right up on the landing at the top of the stairs. My mom's room is down the hall from mine, same floor, not downstairs. So I'm sitting there like, why would she text me come out here at midnight? Out where? And why is it cut off? I opened my bedroom door and looked out into the hallway. Dead quiet. No lights, no movement, nothing. The kind of stillness that makes you feel like you're the only person awake in the entire world. So I'm like, okay, maybe it was a glitch. Maybe I imagined it. I shut my door and try to go back to my show. A few minutes later, I hear footsteps downstairs. Not like soft, someone's grabbing water footsteps. Heavy ones. The kind you feel in your chest a little. And then, not long after that, I hear someone say, "Come on." Clear as day. Loud. Right outside my bedroom door. And I swear to you, it sounded exactly like my mom. Same tone, same cadence, like she was annoyed and trying to get someone to hurry up. My stomach dropped. I got up and opened my door, well, my main door. I also have this second screen door for no good reason, like my room is a porch or something. So the wooden door swings open, but the screen door stays shut. And through that screen door, I see a shadow on the staircase, like 3 steps down. Just a shape where a shape should not be. The second my brain registered it, I slammed everything shut so fast I surprised myself. I dove back into bed like my mattress was the only safe zone on earth, heart hammering so hard it felt like it was shaking my ribs. After that, I stayed completely still. I could still hear movement downstairs, more footsteps, and what sounded like whispering. But I couldn't make out words. Just that low, secretive sound like people talking without wanting to be heard. And then, this part honestly made it worse. About 15 minutes later, my rabbit starts thumping, like frantic, repeated thumps. He's free roam, so he was across the room from me, and he is not a dramatic rabbit. He doesn't thump unless he's genuinely scared, and he wouldn't stop. It was like he was trying to warn me, like he could sense something I couldn't see. At that point, I didn't feel safe leaving my room at all. I just stayed there, listening, trying to convince myself I was being irrational, while my body was screaming that something was wrong, which I already knew she'd say. But I still wanted her to say it, just to calm my brain down a little. And look, I know how this sounds. I'm trying to stay logical about it. Maybe it was a weird notification bug. Maybe I was half asleep. Maybe my brain filled in gaps. But in the moment, it genuinely scared me, like real fear, the kind where you don't even want to swing your feet off the bed. And yes, I'm aware I would absolutely be the first one taken out in a scary movie. Like I'd hear, "Come on," and be like, "Okay," and walk straight into the darkness with zero survival instincts. So, love that for me. I don't even know where to start with this, so I'm just going to tell you the whole thing the way it's been sitting in my chest. So, Christmas Day, yesterday, one of my roommate's cats died, and I can't stop thinking about the fact that I feel like I already watched it happen before it did. Not in the exact real-life way, not perfectly scene for scene, but close enough that it's been messing with my head ever since. Me and a few friends live together in this shared apartment, separate rooms, separate little corners of our lives, but we're basically always together. Between us, we've got 5 cats total. 4 are hers, and 1 is mine. They're always underfoot, always nearby, always quietly included in whatever we're doing, like they're part of the group without needing to try. About a week and a half ago, I had this dream. In the dream, I'm trying to protect all the cats from a dog. And here's the thing that made it feel so wrong right away. The dog wasn't a stranger. It looked like my old dog, Milo, the one I had years ago. He died a long time back, but in the dream he was there, and he was furious, lunging, snapping, like he wanted to hurt them. And I remember crying so hard I could barely breathe. I was screaming, grabbing at collars, shoving cats behind me, trying to block this dog with my own body like that would somehow be enough. In the dream, I managed to save most of them, but not all. There was one white cat. I swear I can still see him so clearly. And in the chaos, he got bitten. The dream was brutal, bloody, too vivid. The kind of vivid that doesn't feel like imagination. It feels like memory. I tried to pull him away. I tried to hold him together, like if I just tried hard enough, I could undo it. But I couldn't. And right when I was still fighting, still begging for another chance, I woke up. Only I didn't wake up relieved. I woke up panicked, like my body didn't understand it was just a dream. I remember lying there thinking, "No, let me go back. Let me go back. I can fix it. I can save him if I get one more try." And what's strange is, I didn't even feel anger at the dog in the dream, because it looked like Milo. I felt confused, almost betrayed, like, why would you do that? I kept spiraling into these ridiculous explanations, like maybe he was jealous, maybe he was angry that I had moved on and brought cats into my life after him. I was trying to give the dream logic because it felt too sharp to ignore. But still, I did ignore it, eventually. Life kept moving, and then Christmas Day happened. It was so fast. Under an hour, everything was different. We still don't know exactly how it happened. The balcony door had been left cracked open, just enough, apparently. And somehow, my friend's white cat, Casper, slipped out. And that's what kills me. Casper wasn't reckless. He wasn't the kind that bolted. He was the calm one, the careful one, the one you trusted. We think he might have hopped up onto the balcony railing chasing a bird, or a moth, or something tiny and harmless like that. We don't know for sure. All we know is we suddenly heard neighbors yelling, real screaming, the kind that makes your stomach drop before your brain catches up. We ran outside, and by the time we got there, The stray dogs were already on him. People were shouting. Someone threw something. Someone tried to chase the dogs off. For a second, it felt like the whole building poured out into the open, like everyone became one frantic blur of voices and movement and helplessness. And there he was, alive, but barely. And I remember seeing the bite marks on his upper leg, his thigh, and I swear to you, my whole body went cold. Because the wound was in the same place. The exact same place I had seen in my dream. He was panting, struggling, fading, while we stood there begging him to stay. We rushed him toward the vet, holding on to hope like it was the only thing keeping us upright. Somebody kept talking to him, telling him he was okay, telling him to hold on, like words could stitch him back together. But we lost him on the way. They tried. They really did. But they couldn't bring him back. And then, this part still feels unreal to say out loud. I saw one of the dogs that had attacked him, and that dog had the same coloring as Milo, the same kind of coat, the same shape. Not identical, but close enough to make my stomach twist. So now I'm sitting with all of that layered on top of the grief. The white cat I couldn't save in my dream. The white cat we couldn't save in real life. The dog that resembled the one I lost years ago. And I know how it sounds. I do. I keep telling myself dreams are just dreams, patterns, fear, coincidence. But it doesn't feel like coincidence when your body recognizes something before your mind can argue with it. And the worst part is, this isn't even the first time I've had dreams that feel like warnings. Like something tapping me on the shoulder before something happens, and I don't know what to do with that. I don't know why my brain does it. I don't know what it means, or if it means anything at all. All I know is I'm devastated. A life ended in one unguarded hour, one slightly open door, one moment of normal that turned into tragedy. And now everything in the apartment feels quieter in this unnatural way, like the air itself is missing a piece. And I keep looping the same questions, over and over, like I'm trying to punish myself into finding a better ending. Should I have told my friend about the dream? Should we have been more careful? Should I have taken it seriously instead of brushing it off? I can't make sense of it. I can't believe it happened on Christmas of all days. And more than anything, I just wish, so badly, it worked the way it does in dreams. That you could wake up, go back, and save the one you couldn't the first time. Okay, so before I tell you this, I need you to know where I'm coming from. I'm not someone who's into seances, necromancy, mediums, or any of that. I was raised Christian, but it never really stayed with me. For years I called myself an atheist, pretty confidently actually. But after a few specific moments that I still can't explain, I don't know. These days I lean more agnostic, like, I don't know what's out there, but I'm not going to pretend I'm certain anymore. The first time it happened was back in 2017, when my great-grandmother, Evelyn, though we all called her Nana Ev, passed away. She wasn't exactly on death's doorstep. She'd been living in a care home a couple states away. I'd seen her at Thanksgiving not long before, and honestly, she looked fine. Not frail, not fading, just unhappy. She'd always been fiercely independent, the kind of woman who hated needing help for anything, and having people do everything for her had chipped away at her spirit. Then one day I was sitting in class, just a normal school day, nothing dramatic happening. And out of nowhere, I felt this heavy pressure on my chest. Not pain exactly, more like someone had set a weight right on me. And with it came this sudden dread, like my stomach dropped, like I just received bad news without hearing a word of it. But then, this is the part that throws me. Right after the dread came this strange calm. like a wave smoothing everything out. Quiet, soft, almost gentle. And immediately, my mind went to Nana Ev. It wasn't even a thought I chose. It just landed there. She's gone. I texted my mom, asking if she'd heard anything about her. She said no, nothing. So I tried to shrug it off, told myself I'd spooked myself for no reason. But later that evening, during dinner, my mom got the call. Nana Ev had passed peacefully in her sleep during an afternoon nap. I didn't say anything about what I'd felt. I honestly thought it was just some weird coincidence, my brain reaching for a story to explain a random sensation. Then it happened again. This time it was the next year, 2018, when my grandmother on my mom's side passed. Her name was Marlene, but we called her Mimi. And with her, it wasn't sudden. She'd been battling cancer for a long time, and the last time I saw her, it was clear she was close. She was exhausted in that deep way that isn't just tiredness. It's like the body is ready to let go. My mom stayed at Mimi's house to be with her, while the rest of us drove back home. That night, I woke up in the dark with that same exact feeling. The weight on my chest, the sharp dread, like a warning alarm inside my body. And then, the calm again. Like something letting me down gently instead of dropping me. And I thought, immediately, Mimi. I tried to be rational about it. I remember even being annoyed at myself, like, okay, great, you're being dramatic. Go back to sleep. But I looked at the time anyway. It was just after 2:30 a.m. I fell back asleep. A couple hours later, I woke up to the sound of my mom coming in. Not just coming in, falling apart. I heard her crying before I even sat up. She went straight to my dad, and through the sobs, she told him Mimi had passed. Our house was a little over an hour away from Mimi's, so when I did the math later, it lined up in a way that made my skin go cold. 2 times could still be coincidence. 2 times could still be my brain picking up stress I didn't realize I was carrying. But it was the pattern that got to me. The same physical feeling, the same emotional sequence, the same instant certainty about who. This one was different because it wasn't someone I was close to. It was my dad's father, my granddad, Lionel. We weren't really a tight family with him. There wasn't regular contact, no warm relationship, none of that. So when I woke up with that familiar chest weight and dread calm combo, I didn't text anyone. I didn't even want to sound ridiculous. But I remember lying there in my dorm thinking, is it him? Why would I be thinking of him? The next morning, my dad got the news. Lionel had passed the day before. We never got an exact time, so I couldn't check it the way I could with the other 2. But still, it was the 3rd time I'd had that same hit, and then found out someone had died right around then. And now I'm home for the holidays, sitting in my mom's house, and we've both been talking about family who've passed. It's that time of year where memories feel closer, like the past is sitting in the room with you. And I've been debating telling her. But here's the thing. My mom is very religious, and she also believes in psychics and mediums. And I don't want to feed that part of it. I don't want her to hear my story and feel validated in giving money to people who claim they can connect with the dead. Because I genuinely think a lot of them are predators. Like, if you had real powers like that, why would you be charging grieving people by the minute? So I've kept this to myself. And also, these are the only close deaths I've experienced. I don't have more examples. I don't have enough data to say, this is a thing I do, or this always happens. All I know is this. 3 times, my body reacted before I heard the news. 3 times, the feeling followed the same script. And it's left me in this weird middle place, where I don't want to invent magic, but I also can't fully explain what happened. And honestly, I think what I want most isn't an answer. I think I just want to say it out loud to someone who won't tell me I'm crazy or try to sell me a reading. So, this happened about 8 or 9 years ago, and it still pops into my head out of nowhere sometimes, usually at night when everything's quiet. Back then, I was stretched out on the couch with my girlfriend. She's my wife now, Mara. We were half watching some movie, half dozing, just that cozy end-of-day kind of calm. And my phone rings. At the time, I used to get scam calls constantly. Like, constantly. And I'll be honest, I'd mess with them. Not even out of anger, more like boredom. I'd put on this ridiculous voice, lean into it way too hard, and Mara would laugh. So naturally, I'd crank it up even more just to keep her giggling. So I answer, already in character, and I'm like, "Hello?" all goofy. And there's nothing. Just silence. I try again. "Hello?" Still nothing. I glance over at Mara like, okay, this is weird, and I put the phone on speaker so she can hear it too. I'm still trying to keep the joke alive because I'm committed at this point, right? I say something dumb again, waiting for the scammer to bite. And then, someone talks. And I swear to you, the voice sounded exactly like Mara. Not kinda similar. Not close enough. I mean her. Same southern drawl, same rhythm, same little quirks in how she says things. The two of us just lock eyes, because it hits both of us at the same time like a cold splash of water. And the voice goes, casual as anything, "Hey Evan, what are you doing?" And the second it says my name, every ounce of joking evaporates. My stomach just drops. I go, "Who is this?" And the voice, still sounding like her, goes, almost annoyed, like I'm being stupid. "It's me, Mara, obviously." I'm staring at my actual Mara sitting right next to me, and my brain is trying to reboot. I say, "No, it's not. She's literally right here. Who the hell is this?" And the voice laughs a little, like I'm the one pulling a prank. Okay, very funny. So what are you up to today?" That's the part that messed with me the most. It wasn't just the voice. It was how comfortable it sounded. Like whoever it was had known me for years. Like nothing about this was strange. I hung up. Just ended it. Mara's looking at me like she saw a ghost, and I'm looking at her like I'm trying to confirm she's real. I asked her immediately, "Did you have one of your friends call me? Is this some prank?" She swore she didn't, and she looked genuinely shaken, like pale, quiet, the kind of shaken where you don't even know what to say because your mouth is dry. We're both just sitting there in this weird silence, the TV still going, but it might as well not be. Then my phone rings again. Same number. I pick up, speaker still on, and it's the same voice, but now it's irritated. "Why did you hang up?" And then, sharper, "What the hell is going on?" I didn't say a word that time. I just hung up again. And that was it. No more calls, no follow-up, nothing. Like it never happened. And I know how it sounds. I know it's one of those stories that, if someone told it to me, I'd probably start trying to explain it away too. Wrong number, coincidence, someone who happened to sound similar, maybe even someone using one of those voice-changing apps. But it wasn't just similar. It was her. Down to sentence patterns, down to the little ways she'd phrase something. And it knew my name immediately, like it expected me to respond normally. What was that? To this day, I honestly don't know if it was some elaborate prank, some freaky coincidence, or something way more mundane that just happened to land in the creepiest possible way. I've gone back and forth with it a million times, and I'm not saying I have an answer. I don't. I just know it happened, and I've never forgotten the sound of her voice coming from my phone while she was sitting right beside me. So, I don't know if you've ever played Scatterjacks, or maybe you called it something else where you grew up, but when I was a kid, it was everything for a while. It was one of those simple little games adults barely notice. A rubber ball, a handful of metal jacks, and a floor you didn't mind kneeling on for an hour straight. My little brother Eli and I used to play it constantly at our place. And it wasn't just us. Kids from up and down the street would wander over after school like it was an unspoken rule. We'd end up with, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 of us crammed into the living room, laughing, arguing over whose turn it was, and listening to that very specific soundtrack. Thump thump of the ball, and that sharp little click-clack when someone scooped up the jacks. It became this cozy routine, like the neighborhood had its own heartbeat for an hour every afternoon. And honestly, nothing felt weird about it at all. Until one day it did. It was maybe 10 days after we'd really gotten into the habit, long enough that it felt normal. That afternoon, we weren't even playing. We were sprawled out in front of the TV, half watching some cartoon, half zoning out. The jacks weren't out. The ball wasn't out. Nobody was taking turns. We were just sitting there. Then we heard it. That sound. The exact Scatterjacks sound. The rubber ball bouncing. Thump. Thump. And the jacks tapping like someone was picking them up. Click. 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 At first I thought maybe someone was messing with us. Like Eli was hiding the ball behind his back, waiting for the perfect moment to be annoying. But we all turned and stared at each other at the same time, and you could tell instantly. Nobody was joking. The sound kept going, and it wasn't coming from the living room. It was coming from down the hall. We got up, slowly, like our bodies were trying to convince our brains not to, and followed it to the spare bedroom. The door was open. We could see straight in. Nobody was in there. No jacks on the floor. No ball. Nothing rolled under the bed. Nothing in the corner. Nothing on the dresser. Just a quiet, ordinary room. Except it wasn't quiet, because the game sounds were still happening. Like an invisible kid was kneeling on the carpet, playing a perfect round like it had done it 1,000 times. I remember the feeling in my stomach more than anything. It wasn't dramatic, like in movies. It was worse than that, because it was so normal looking and so impossible at the same time. Like your brain keeps reaching for an explanation and your hands come back empty. We just stood there. Nobody wanted to step fully into the room. And then my dad showed up. My father, Pastor Ronan, though we never called him that at home, was a deeply religious man. Not casually. Not goes to church on holidays. I mean the kind of person who could quote scripture the way other dads quote sports stats. He'd been a preacher for a few years before taking a regular job again, but that faith never left him. He took one look at us standing there like statues, heard the sound, and he didn't hesitate. He didn't ask questions. He just started praying out loud. And I swear to you, as soon as he did, the bouncing and clicking started to thin out, like turning down the volume on a radio. Thump, thump, click, softer, slower. For a second, I thought it was over. Then it started again, sudden and clear, but not in the bedroom, in the laundry room. We all snapped our heads toward the other end of the house, and my dad immediately walked that direction, still praying like he was following it. When he got there, the sound faded again, same as before, like it couldn't stand to stay in the same place where he was praying. That's the part I can't explain without sounding ridiculous, but it truly felt like the prayer wasn't stopping it. It was moving it. like the sound was being pushed out of rooms one by one, retreating deeper into the house, like it was looking for somewhere my dad's voice couldn't reach. This happened a few more times. Pantry, then the hallway closet, then, this one still gives me chills, the bathroom, where the echo made it sound even sharper, like the jacks were tapping right against the tile. Each time my dad followed, each time he prayed, each time the sound would weaken, and then jump somewhere else, as if it refused to go quietly, but also couldn't hold its ground. Finally, after what felt like forever, but was probably only a couple minutes, it just stopped. Not faded, not drifted away, stopped, like someone had cut a string, and the house went so still that it felt like we were all holding our breath at the same time. After that, Scatterjacks was done. We didn't have to make a big rule about it, though my dad did pack the game away. But honestly, none of us even wanted to look at it. The fun had drained out of it like a light turning off. The ball and the jacks just felt wrong, like they belonged to something else now. What's wild is, years later, we'd bring it up sometimes, at family gatherings or when Eli and I were reminiscing, and it always made the room go quiet for a moment. Because everyone who was there remembers the sound the same way. The way it moved, the way it felt. And we did ask the neighborhood kids as we got older, the ones who used to come over all the time. We'd phrase it casually like, "Hey, do you remember that game? Did anything weird ever happen at your house?" Every single one of them said no. Nothing like that. Not once. Just us. Just that afternoon. And to this day, whenever I hear a rubber ball bouncing somewhere, like in a gym or a driveway, I get this tiny jolt in my chest. Because for a split second, my brain expects to hear the click-clack of jacks right after it, even though I haven't touched that game in years. So, this happened when I was maybe 13, 14 at the most, at this church camp I used to go to. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that even now, years later, I get that full body rush of chills when I tell it. Like goosebumps in the middle of a heat wave, no joke. It was late, around 10 p.m. give or take, and me and 3 friends were messing around playing this kind of hide-and-seek tag game. There was me, Kayla, Devin, and Marco. We were walking toward the spot where we were going to start, just laughing and being loud like kids are when they're supposed to be settling down for the night. And that's when we saw it. There were these big metal dumpsters by one of the maintenance areas, like the kind you see at construction sites. And we noticed a head pop up over the edge. Just peek, like someone was watching us. Of course, we didn't do the smart thing and leave it alone. We did the teenage thing. We got all whispery and decided we were going to sneak up and catch whoever it was. So we split, 2 on one side, 2 on the other, thinking we'd box them in. Devin did this little whistle signal, like we were in some action movie, and we all moved in at the same time. We rounded the corner and nothing. No one. We even checked inside the dumpster, like actually leaned in and looked, which is disgusting when I think about it now, and it was empty. No footprints, no rustling, no sound. Just trash and darkness. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. Someone running down the slope away from us, headed toward another cluster of cabins. It was a decent distance, maybe the length of a football field. And again, we did the teenage thing. We chased. At first it felt kind of exciting, like, oh, we caught somebody messing with us. But as we got closer to the other campsite, the vibe changed. The path narrowed and the trees got thicker, and suddenly it didn't feel like camp anymore. It felt like we weren't supposed to be there. We slowed down a little, and that's when it happened. About 10 feet in front of us, right there in the trees, a face appeared from behind a trunk. And I don't know how else to describe it except it was wrong. Not just someone in the dark, but like the darkness itself had a face. It was so unnaturally dark that it looked like it swallowed the light around it. I don't even remember us deciding to move. I just remember, all at once, we were clustered behind Marco, because he was the biggest out of us, and he had this pocket knife out, like that was going to do anything. His hand was shaking so hard I could see it. The face vanished, and we all just stood there, barely breathing. Because the tree it peeked from, listen, was thin. Not skinny, but thin enough that there's no way a full person could hide behind it. There wasn't room. There wasn't space. And then, like a second later, it popped out from a completely different tree. Not walking over, not stepping out. It was just there. Then it moved again, ran or glided or hovered. I honestly don't know. The motion didn't look human. It didn't look like feet hitting the ground. It was like something sliding through the air, low and fast. And then it disappeared behind this little sapling that was even thinner than the first one. And that was it for us. We didn't scream. We didn't talk. We just turned around and got out of there as fast as we could without tripping over ourselves. But when I tried to tell someone, I couldn't. I opened my mouth and nothing came out. Like my voice was just gone. My throat worked, my lungs worked, I could breathe, but it was like my vocal cords refused to cooperate. Like one of those nightmares where you try to scream and you can't make a sound. I stood there for what felt like forever, just shaking, trying to force words out. And it took, I swear, like 15 minutes before my voice finally came back. When it did, we found this older guy. His name was Brandon. I think he was maybe 18 or 19, and we told him everything, every detail we could remember. And he kind of did that older kid thing where he acts calm, but you can tell he's curious. Like he wanted to believe us, but he didn't want to look like he believed us. So he and a couple of his friends convinced us to go back out there and explain it again. Just show us where it happened, tell it step by step. Even worse, he separated us, put us in different spots and had us tell it individually, like he was trying to catch someone lying. And here's what still messes with me. All four of us told the same story. Same dumpster, same running shape, same face, same trees, same movement. By that point, I was a mess. Barely talking, voice thin and shaky, arms covered in goosebumps. I remember Brandon walking with us, still skeptical but quieter now. And then, he saw it. I didn't even have to point. I saw his whole body stiffen. His face went white, like all the blood drained out at once. And whatever he saw, whatever we saw, hit him the exact same way it hit us. That terror, the instant animal panic. He whispered something like, "Nope," and we all rushed back inside, fast, clumsy, tripping over roots, not caring if we looked ridiculous. When we got back into the building, adults started crowding around us, asking what happened, telling us to sit down. And I remember one of them touching my cheek and saying, "Honey, your face is so pale you look dead." And I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like campfire story stuff. But I'm telling you, hand to my heart, something was out there that night. And every time I remember that face in the trees, I get those chills all over again. So, I've never really been a paranormal person. Like, I'm not out here thinking about ghosts or demons or any of that. My Aunt Marisol and a couple of my friends totally believe in the gentler side of it. Past loved ones checking in, little signs, guidance, that kind of thing. And honestly, I've always been like, Sure, maybe. And then I just move on with my life. I never really left room in my head for anything darker. But after what happened the other night, I'm not gonna lie, I've been jumpy in a way I've never been before. I'd been visiting family for the holidays, and I flew home late because the tickets were way cheaper the day after Christmas. The whole day was chaos. My flight got delayed, and I spent hours convinced my checked bag was just gone. Like, permanently. So I'm pacing, checking emails, checking claim numbers, checking my phone every 30 seconds. And by the time I finally get home, it's around midnight, and my nerves are completely cooked. And the weird thing is, I'm not even tired. I slept through most of the flight, and I kind of dozed in the terminal too. So I'm home, it's quiet, and I'm like, okay, I just need something normal. I collect Lego sets, so I sit down at my desk and start building one I've been saving for a while. I put on this comfort show, something I've watched a bunch of times, just for background noise. I'm trying to force my brain back into safe mode, you know? Maybe 20 minutes in, I hear this thunk, like something solid hitting the floor. I freeze. I pause the show. I rewind because I'm half convinced it was just the TV and my stressed out brain is being dramatic. But no, I play it again. Nothing like that sound. The apartment is quiet again. And I'm also realizing I'm still in yesterday's clothes, like I've been marinating in airport air for a full day. So I'm like, fine, I'll go change, and I'll check what that sound was while I'm at it. The sound came from this little laundry and storage room off the hallway, kind of where I keep extra clothes, towels, random boxes, all that. There's also a small bed in there for when someone visits. So I walk in, flip on the light, and immediately see what it was. A framed photo had slipped off its hook and fallen. It's this old picture of me with my childhood dog, Bramble, my first dog. He passed a few years ago, and I still keep that photo up because it makes me smile, even when I'm stressed. Seeing it on the floor felt sad, but not scary. Just one of those, oh no, moments. So I pick it up, straighten the hook, put it back on the wall. No big deal. I'm telling myself, it's fine. Old hook, or the door closing earlier, or whatever. And then, this is the part I hate even saying out loud, because it sounds like something out of a cheap horror scene. I'm turning slightly, like I'm about to grab clean clothes, and from the corner of my eye, I see movement near the little guest bed in the corner. Low to the floor. A hand. Like an actual hand shape, pulling backward, like someone was under the bed and yanking their arm out of sight. I saw it for a split second, but it was so clear that my stomach dropped before my brain even caught up. And I didn't do the brave movie thing. I didn't investigate. I didn't call out. I didn't even think. I just ran. Full panic. Heart pounding, skin cold, the whole thing. I'm 22 years old, like an adult, and I'm sprinting down the hallway like a scared kid. I slammed my bedroom door and stood there shaking, trying to convince myself I didn't see what I saw. For 10 minutes, I'm in my room just listening, holding my breath, waiting for a sound, waiting for footsteps, waiting for anything. And nothing happens, but I can't just leave it there. I can't go to sleep with that room just existing on the other side of the hallway like a question mark. So I do what a genius does when they're terrified. I grab the biggest kitchen knife I can find, and I march back down the hallway like I'm about to star in the world's saddest action movie. I flip the light on. Everything looks normal. No weird shapes, no movement, no sound. Just the bed, the shelves, the laundry hamper. Ordinary. And then I look over at the wall. The photo is on the floor again, and this time the frame is cracked. That is when I felt the fear settle in. Not like a jump scare, but like a heavy weight. Because one fall? Sure. 2 falls right after I hung it and cracked the frame. It just felt personal. Like the universe picked the one photo that could tug on my emotions and decided to knock it down twice. So I picked it up, didn't even try to fix it again, and I carried it back to my room, like it was something fragile in more ways than one. I stayed up the rest of the night, not even on my phone, not even watching anything, just listening. And nothing else happened. No footsteps, no doors, no whispering, no anything. Which almost makes it worse, because now I'm left alone with my imagination. Since then, I swear my senses are cranked up to 1,000. Every creak, every tiny settling noise, every little pop from the building. I'm hearing it all like it's right next to my ear. It's like my brain is scanning constantly now, trying to catch the next proof that something is wrong. And I keep going back and forth between 2 thoughts. One is, you were stressed, overtired, your eyes played a trick, and the picture hook is just loose. And the other is, okay, but then why did it feel so real? So yeah, that's where I'm at. I don't even know what I'm asking for. Maybe just someone to tell me I'm not losing it, or to give me a normal explanation that my brain can actually believe. Because right now, I'm home, but I don't feel fully settled in my own place anymore. Okay, so I need to tell you about something that happened to me that still feels unreal when I say it out loud. A couple nights before this, I went to a concert with my friend Maya. After the show, she was like, "Do you want to come hang out with someone I know?" And I was in that post-concert floaty mood, so I said yes. We ended up at this guy's place. His name was Eli, and it was my first time meeting him. And listen, I've always been open to spiritual stuff. Like, I grew up around people who talked about energy and intuition and all that. But I'd never actually had anything happen to me. Not like an encounter. That night with Eli felt different right away. The vibe in his apartment was intense, kind of unfamiliar, like the air was charged. We stayed up until literally almost sunrise, like 5:30 or 6 in the morning, just talking. Beliefs, energy, consciousness, spirituality. And Eli spoke like he'd been living inside that world for years. It wasn't creepy exactly, just a lot. Like I was hearing things my body recognized, but my brain hadn't caught up to yet. I ended up staying an extra day, and when I finally went home, it was late. I was in the Uber, headphones in, staring out the window like you do, half asleep. And at one point I closed my eyes and it was like, this sounds dramatic, but it was like I almost started getting these little flashes. Not a dream, not imagination, more like images arriving. The clearest one was a train, like the front of it, and railway tracks stretching out. It wasn't scary, just weirdly vivid. I remember opening my eyes and being like, huh, and then brushing it off. But then I got home. And this was my first night back in my own bed after all of that. So I'm lying there, drifting towards sleep. You know that moment where your thoughts are starting to dissolve and everything gets soft and heavy? And then, suddenly, I see this blue light. Like, not a glow from outside, not a reflection, not a car headlight. It was right there, super close to me. It was rising in the air above my pillow, maybe like a foot above it. And it had this clean, electric kind of blue. Not harsh, more like living. I sat up fast because I was like, no, absolutely not. I'm imagining this. But it didn't go away. And then, for some reason, I reached out. Like my body decided before I could talk myself out of it. I reached out and touched it, and it responded. That's the part that still gets me. It moved in the air where my hand was, like it was aware of my touch. And it started changing shape. It would stretch into one form, then fold into another, like it was playing? or communicating? It slowly rose higher while I kept following it with my hand, kind of tracing it in the air. And I remember feeling this mixture of fascination and, I should be panicking right now. Eventually it faded, like it thinned out, and I exhaled like, okay, it's done. But then I stood up and saw it again. This time it wasn't floating. It looked like the remaining glow had kind of stuck itself to the wall above my bed, like it had anchored there, just sitting, quiet, present. That's when I fully freaked out. I basically speed walked downstairs like, nope, I need to change the air around me. I need a snack. I need a different reality. I stayed down there a while, trying to calm my nervous system down, telling myself maybe it was a visual thing. Maybe I was overtired. Maybe it was my eyes. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had opened. So I went into my mom's room. My mom's name is Renee. And I sat on the edge of her bed to tell her what happened. I didn't even know what I wanted her to do. I just needed another human presence. And this is where it escalates. Not like a single shadow, like multiple, a lot. It looked like they were lined up. Honestly, it reminded me of that feeling in Spirited Away, where these spirits are just there, waiting, existing, like they have their own rules and routines. It was like a whole ocheride, like a queue, like they were waiting their turn. And I could feel them. That's what made it so intense. The way you feel energy in a crowded room, even if your eyes are closed, the density of other presences. That's what it felt like, except the room was quiet. I was frozen on the edge of the bed, and one would step forward, directly in front of me. Close, like within a foot, and it would just stand there, shifting subtly, like its outline couldn't decide what shape to be. And I got this impression of frustration, like it was trying to tell me something without words, and I was just not getting it. Then it would step away. Sometimes it even looked like it bowed, like a tiny, respectful dip, before fading back. And then the next one would come forward, one by one. I remember thinking, why is this so organized? Why does this feel like I accidentally walked into some spiritual DMV? And then one came forward that felt completely different. This one, I don't even know how to describe it without sounding ridiculous. It looked like it had a flower for a head, like petals, but not solid, more like shifting layers of shape and texture. It kept morphing, almost like it was made of soft smoke and light at the same time. But the feeling it brought was so gentle. As it stood there, this wave came over me. Wonder, love, curiosity, peace. Like my chest unclenched. And I got this sense, this really mutual sense, that it was looking at me the way I was looking at it. Like we were both kind of amazed by each other. We just stayed there for a moment, almost taking in each other's energy. It also felt like it was trying to communicate something, but I couldn't translate it. Like it was speaking in a language made of feeling, and I didn't have the subtitles. Eventually it stepped back, like the others. But then, this part is so clear in my memory. It started signaling to me, like with an arm, or what I interpreted as an arm. It motioned like, come with me, like it wanted me to follow it back to wherever it came from. And here's what's weird. It didn't feel threatening. It felt welcoming, almost inviting, like, we can show you something. But it also felt slightly annoyed that I wasn't moving, like, why aren't you understanding? Come on. Then I saw these other shapes, almost like arms too, reaching toward the bed, the side table, and toward me. Not grabbing exactly, more like touching or testing the space, like they were feeling around the room. And then something happened that made my stomach drop. My phone was on the side table next to me, screen facing up, and it looked like some of those shadowy forms were getting pulled toward it, like they were being sucked into the phone screen, almost like the screen was acting like a portal. I remember staring at it like, no, 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 absolutely not. Not the iPhone portal, not tonight. At some point, I don't even remember how, the intensity eased, like a storm passing, like the room thinned out again. And the next morning, I noticed something I have never seen in my life. There were rainbows, like little rainbow light reflections, by every single window in my house. Not just one window with a prism effect. Every window, multiple points of color, like the house itself was sparkling with it. And I stood there in the daylight, staring at those rainbows, and I just had this deep, quiet feeling like something had been active, like something had visited. But I do know this. After that night, it stopped being an abstract idea to me. It felt like something looked straight at me and said, without words, "Hi, you can see us." So, there are 2 times in my life where I've wanted an explanation so badly, it almost felt like an itch under my skin. Because I'm the kind of person who needs things to make sense. I've always leaned on science, logic, evidence, and honestly, that's part of why these memories won't leave me alone. Because the most unscientific thing I could do would be to pretend it didn't happen. Like my own senses don't count as data just because the why never showed up. And yeah, on the surface, someone could shrug and say, ghosts, easy label. But what makes it harder to dismiss is that the person I lived with at the time, my roommate, Marcus, saw them too. The exact same figures, the same details, the same awful, sinking feeling. And we didn't even talk about it for months, because we were both terrified the other one would laugh. The first place, the man at the door. Back in 2002, when I was in college, I lived in the dorms, but on weekends I'd crash at my friend Eli's apartment. Sometimes I'd stop by during weekday afternoons too, just to hang out or grab something I'd left there. The building was this 3-story block with an outdoor staircase and an outdoor balcony that ran along the front. Doors lined up along it like little rectangles in a row. Eli's unit was on the top floor, about halfway down the balcony. Most of the time, going there was completely normal. Walk up, climb the stairs, let myself in. Half the time Eli wasn't even home, and that was fine. I'd just wait inside. But every once in a while, maybe once or twice a month, I'd get to the footpath outside the building and stop. Not like a casual pause, like my body just locked. And I'd know, before I even looked, exactly what I was going to see. Up there, outside Eli's door, maybe 40 meters away along that balcony, there would be a figure, a man. But not a normal man, more like a shadow shaped like a man, darker than the afternoon around him. He'd be standing right at the door with one hand lifted, frozen mid-motion, like he was about to slide a key into the lock. And then, this part still makes my stomach tighten, he'd turn his head, just slightly, like he'd sensed me. And even though I couldn't see facial features, I knew he was looking straight down at me, like his attention snapped onto mine and held there. We'd stare at each other for 2 or 3 seconds, and it felt intimate in the worst way, like being seen when you don't want to be. Then he'd turn back toward the door, and instead of opening it, he'd just pass through it, like the door wasn't even there. The first few times, I did what I always do. I tried to solve it. Okay, shadows, tree branches, weird lighting, optical illusion. I told myself my freezing was just the shock of seeing something unexpected. But there was another pattern I couldn't ignore. I only ever saw him when Eli wasn't home. And over time, it stopped feeling like some random visual glitch and started feeling intentional. Like the figure was trying to get inside before I came up the stairs. You know that feeling when you're in an elevator and there's someone walking toward you down the hallway and you're silently begging the doors to close faster? That's what it felt like coming off him. This urgent, get away from you energy, like he didn't want me getting any closer. After months of this, it was driving me insane. I'd be standing there on the footpath, heart hammering, telling myself to move, telling myself it was nothing, and my legs still wouldn't work properly until it was over. And then one day I finally broke. Eli came home and I said, "Okay, you're going to think I've lost it, but you have to promise me you won't laugh." I remember my whole body going cold. I said, "Wait, what man are you talking about?" And he told me. When he'd pull into the car park and come around the corner, he'd sometimes see a man standing outside his apartment door. Shadowy, no clear features, but unmistakably looking right at him. Then the man would turn and walk straight through the door. And this is the detail that really hit me. Eli said that whenever he saw the man, he'd instantly know I wasn't inside the apartment yet. So for half a year, we'd both been seeing the same figure, describing him the same way, feeling the same unease, getting that same impression of him wanting to get inside before we got too close. We tried to come up with explanations. Light angles, reflections, exhaustion, coincidence, suggestion, anything. Nothing held up. And we kept seeing him until the day Eli moved out. The second place, the boy on the stairs. The next year, 2004, Eli and I moved into a different place together. This 3-story house with a layout that felt wrong even when nothing strange was happening. When you walked in from the street, you immediately had to go up a flight of stairs to reach the main level. Then, right at the top, the first door on the right led into the kitchen. And inside the kitchen there was another staircase that went up again, to my bedroom. So the kitchen basically sat right beside this second stairwell, and you'd always have to turn your body toward it, almost brushing past it, to go further into the house. I first saw him just a few weeks after we moved in. I'd gotten home in the evening, came in the front door, walked up the first flight of stairs, and turned right into the kitchen. And out of the corner of my eye, right there on the next flight of stairs, I saw a boy sitting on the steps. And it wasn't like the shadow man. This wasn't vague. This wasn't maybe. I could see him. He looked around 9 years old. Blonde hair, a red and white striped shirt, khaki shorts, bare feet. He was perched on the step like he'd been waiting, leaning forward slightly, smiling like he was amused to see me. And the worst part was how real he seemed. Not foggy, not translucent, not eerie in a movie way. Just a boy, looking at me through the banister rails. I startled so hard I almost stumbled, and when I turned my head to look directly at him, there was nobody there. This didn't happen every day, more like once a month, always evenings, always when I was turning into that kitchen. But every single time it happened, it scared the hell out of me. Not because he did anything. He never moved toward me, never spoke, never changed expression, but because my brain could not reconcile how vivid he was with how empty the stairs became the second I looked straight at him. And again, I kept it to myself. Because what do you even say? Hey, just so you know, there's a smiling child that appears on the stairs sometimes. No thanks. Until the day Eli and I got home at the same time. I walked in ahead of him, went up the first flight, and turned right into the kitchen. I saw the boy. I jumped, same as always. And Eli, right behind me, went, "Why did you just jump?" I tried to play it off. I sat at the kitchen table and said something vague like, "It's nothing. It's just, sometimes." And he cut in immediately, like he'd been waiting for me to finally say it. "You see the boy on the stairs." I just stared at him, and I asked him to describe the boy. 9-ish, blonde hair, red and white striped shirt, big smile. Exactly what I saw. We lived there for 2 years, and I kept seeing him. And I want to be really clear. I didn't want to. I tried to science it away. I removed anything reflective from the kitchen. I changed the lighting. I even put a brighter light directly over the spot to kill any shadows or weird angles. None of it mattered. And honestly, if Eli hadn't been right behind me that night, if he hadn't heard the fear in my reaction, I think I would have carried that one alone too. Because I still don't have an explanation. Just two places, two figures, and the uncomfortable fact that the evidence includes more than just me. Welcome back to the Paranormal M channel. It's been a long day, but I finally got everything wrapped up. Being here with you all makes me feel so relaxed and genuinely happy. It really means a lot knowing you're here with me, sharing these paranormal experiences. Thank you so much for sending in your stories. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos. Alright, let's get started. So, I should start with a little context, because otherwise this is going to sound like I'm jumping straight into the weirdest part. This happened when I was about 30. I was kind of a spiritual dabbler back then, curious, reading a bit of Eastern philosophy, going to the occasional meditation night, trying to make sense of life in that there has to be something more way. But I wasn't deeply committed to any one path. And then there was him. I'll call him Dylan. Dylan was into the more fringe stuff, like intense New Age rabbit holes, apparitions, channeling, aliens, all that. And he had this secretive streak that never sat right with me. He'd tell stories that didn't add up, change details, insist he'd forgotten things he'd definitely said. Little lies, big lies, just constant fog. I also knew he struggled with a compulsive sex problem, and he'd hinted at some really ugly behavior from his past that made my stomach turn. Not, I messed up and I'm ashamed, ugly. More like he wanted to shock me with it, like he liked the power of saying it out loud. That was one of the big reasons I'd reached the end of my patience. After about a year of emotional whiplash and confusion, I was done. But when I told him I was leaving, he got this look, almost smug, and said, "I just want to show you something about myself first." Not in a vulnerable way, more like he thought he had a reveal, like this was going to impress me or change my mind. And honestly, I didn't feel scared. I felt tired. I felt sorry for him. And I remember thinking, fine, let him have his little moment, then I'm gone. So I stayed. He had us sit on the floor, facing each other. He said he was going to meditate, and I was just supposed to watch. The room was quiet. No music, no candles, none of the usual dramatic stuff. Just him, cross-legged, eyes closed, breathing slowly. Maybe a minute passed, maybe two. Time got slippery after that. And then, this is the part I can still see as clearly as if it happened yesterday. He opened his eyes and looked right at me. His eyes were wrong. Not just the pupils, not like they were dilated. I mean all of it. The iris, the whites, everything was pitch black, like two perfectly smooth, bottomless pools. No reflection, no life, no human in them at all. And at almost the exact same moment, the room felt colder. Not like I got goosebumps because I was nervous, like the temperature dropped, sharply, as if someone had opened a door to winter. He didn't smile. He didn't blink. He didn't move. He just stared at me with those black eyes. And I need you to understand, I didn't have time to build theories or talk myself into anything. It wasn't like, oh, this could mean X or Y. It was instant, like information landing whole in my body. Whatever was looking at me wasn't Dylan. It felt ancient, and it felt hateful. Not personal hatred like someone being mad at you. Bigger than that. like a cold, vast contempt for people, for humanity. The sensation was so intense it was almost physical, like pressure in the air. And with that came this strange, simultaneous knowing. It wanted to harm me. It wanted to harm us. But it couldn't. Not because it didn't feel powerful, because it did, but because it was blocked, restricted, like there were rules it couldn't break in that moment. I remember feeling grateful in the middle of the fear, which is such a strange combination, like my whole body was saying, "This is real, and you are held." I don't know how long it lasted. Seconds? A minute? Time didn't behave normally. It felt like it could go on forever if I just sat there. Finally, I spoke, because I realized he was going to keep staring as long as I let him. I said, very calmly, almost like I was talking to someone misbehaving, "Okay, that's enough." And as I said it, I reached out and touched his arm. And that was the second shock. Normally, Dylan was kind of wiry, light build, jittery energy, always tapping a foot or shifting his posture. But when I touched him then, it was like touching something solid in a way people aren't solid. Like stone, like a statue that couldn't be budged. There was no softness, no warmth, no sense of a living body responding. It was the strangest tactile feeling I've ever had, this absolute, immovable density. Then he looked away. He closed his eyes, took a breath, and when he opened them again, they were normal, brown, human. His face softened. His arm felt like an arm again. The coldness in the room lifted, like someone turned the temperature back to ordinary. He blinked a few times, and then, with this self-satisfied little tone, he went, "So, what did you think?" And I went into this dry, protective mode I get when I'm trying not to escalate something with someone unstable. I said, "Well, whatever that was, I wouldn't invite it to dinner." That's it. No long conversation. No debate. No giving him anything to twist into a fantasy about being special or chosen. Because I already knew, if I told him how terrifying it was, he'd turn it into a compliment. If I told him how real it felt, he'd make it into a story where he was powerful and important. And I didn't want to feed that. I just wanted out of that room, out of his orbit, back into my own life. I left not long after, and I never went back. Even now, years later, I don't pretend I have a neat explanation for what happened. I've heard people talk about black-eyed phenomena, and I've read that some religious folks interpret it as demonic. Other people have different frameworks. I'm not married to a theory. What I know, what I still know in my bones, is that something looked at me through him that night, and it hated us, and it couldn't touch what it hated. And if you've ever experienced anything even remotely like that, you know exactly what I mean when I say, the knowing arrives all at once, and it doesn't ask permission from your skepticism. It just lands. So, I'm 43 now, and I live out in Oregon. And a few years back, my life didn't just get hard. It cracked right down the middle. It was 2020, the kind of year where everything already felt cursed. And then, in my personal world, it all fell apart in one brutal sweep. My closest friend, Marissa, lost her fight with cancer. My brother packed up and moved clear across the country with his kids. And that same day, like the universe wanted to really make sure I understood the message, my old cat, Jasper, who'd been with me forever, died too. It sounds dramatic when you say it out loud, but it genuinely felt like something reached in and pulled out every emotional support beam I had left. and I wasn't starting from a healthy place. I've carried heavy stuff my whole life: abuse, anxiety, depression, addiction. The kind of baggage you learn to smile over so people don't ask questions. But when that pile of grief hit all at once, I didn't rise to meet it. I folded. I disappeared inside myself. At first, I told myself I was just trying to get through the days. My friend had been on morphine at the end, and there was some left behind. I started taking it. Then it ran out, and I didn't stop. I just switched tracks. I found fentanyl on the street, and the spiral was fast. It always is. One minute you're coping, and the next minute you're not really living anywhere. You're just hiding inside your own body, trying not to feel. Eventually, pneumonia almost killed me. I remember this one night so clearly it still makes my stomach tighten. Feverish, barely breathing, sweating through the sheets, and honestly thinking, this might be it. I couldn't even work up the energy to cry. I just laid there and whispered into the dark. Not a fancy prayer, not a religious moment, just this quiet, desperate thought like, please, someone help me, anything, anyone. And here's the part that still makes me feel weird even saying it. Something answered. I felt the mattress dip beside me, slow, heavy, deliberate, like a person sitting down carefully. But there were no footsteps, no breath, no rustle of clothes, just presence. Thick, focused, intentional. After that night, my house didn't feel like my house anymore. I'd adopted a newer cat not long before. Her name was Poppy, and she used to sleep right next to me, always. But after that, she wouldn't go into my bedroom. She'd stop at the doorway like she hit a wall, frozen, eyes wide, and her head would track something I couldn't see, like she was watching it cross the room. Then it started happening in the rest of the house. Little things at first. Shoes tipping over on their own, small objects not being where I left them. And the whispers. I don't mean voices having full conversations. I mean like the edges of sound brushing past your ear when the room is supposed to be quiet. Enough that you turn your head, thinking someone's behind you. And then one morning I woke up and my ceiling fan had come loose. It was hanging over my bed by one cord. I sat up and stared at it like my brain refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. Because how does that happen quietly? How does that happen without shaking the whole ceiling? I just remember thinking, if that had dropped. After that, the shadows started. At first, it was like flickers in the corner of my eye, the kind you try to explain away. Sleep deprivation, drugs, stress, whatever. But it didn't stay subtle. But the moment I can't shake, the moment that branded itself into my memory, happened at the stairs. I was standing at the top of the staircase, looking down into the living room. It was dim, not pitch black, just that low light you get at night when you haven't turned everything off. And this shadow thing started moving. Fast, chaotic, almost playful in the creepiest way, jumping from the couch to the chair, darting, swinging, like it was using the furniture as a playground. And it moved with this speed and smoothness that made my whole body go cold. And right then, right at that exact moment, Poppy came running up beside me and pressed herself hard against my leg. She was rigid, trembling, staring straight down the stairs. We stood there together, me and my cat, watching it. And in that moment, something in me just broke in a different way. Because I could argue with my own mind all day. I could tell myself I was imagining it. But my cat wasn't imagining it. She saw it too. After that, it felt like my inner light dimmed, like something inside me got smothered. I wasn't just depressed. My spirit felt shut off, like someone had pulled a heavy blanket over my soul. I tried everything people suggest when they don't really know what else to say. Sage, crystals, salt in the corners. I even went to this little metaphysical shop and met a woman who used a pendulum and talked about energy fields. She told me, gently, that something was there, but it wouldn't respond to her. And yeah, plenty of people assumed I was losing it. They blamed drugs, psychosis, paranoia. Obviously, don't create moving shadows that animals react to in real time. That's not how it works. And deep down, I knew what I was living with wasn't just in my head. Eventually, I found a place called a shamanic healing center outside Portland, and I met a guy named Eli. Talking to him felt like finally meeting someone who wasn't trying to translate me into something easier to dismiss. He said he sees attachments most often when someone's energy is shattered. Huge trauma, grief, addiction, or people who are around death and chaos constantly. First responders, people who do cleanup jobs, people who live near the edge for too long. He told me he wasn't born into a lineage. He'd trained with healers in South America after going through his own nightmare years earlier out in the desert. When I got there, he had me lie down on a table. He held a pendulum over my body, over what he called the energy centers. And it didn't move. Not once. Not even a tremble. He didn't dramatize it. He didn't act impressed. He just said, very calmly, that everything was blocked. That when the whole system is shut down like that, it usually means something heavy is clamped on. Then he started. And I swear, the air changed. Like the room thickened. My body started swaying even though I was lying still. There was fast whispering in my ears, panicked and messy, like a rush of voices I couldn't quite understand. When he worked near my chest, especially on the left side, where the pneumonia had hit me hardest, it felt like pressure pushing back, like something didn't want to let go. At one point, when he moved to my hand, I felt a tug at one finger so distinctly I jerked. He paused and said he needed to clear that spot again, like whatever it was had grabbed hold there. And then, suddenly, it stopped. The whispering vanished. The pressure lifted. The air felt normal again, like someone opened a window inside my body. He told me it was gone, sent back where it belonged. And I just started crying. Not because I was scared, because I could breathe again, like my soul had been holding its breath for years without me realizing it. I left there feeling lighter, clearer, like something inside me had been unclenched. The next day, I checked into rehab. I stayed about a month. I got sober. And now, almost 2 years later, I'm rebuilding my life in a way I honestly didn't believe I'd ever get the chance to. I do hot yoga most days. I keep my home calm and protected in ways that make sense to me. I live with boundaries now, real ones, not just the kind you say you have. Do I still battle addictive patterns? Yeah, I'm human. That part doesn't magically vanish. But I will never go back to opioids. I will never go back to that darkness. Because whatever happened in that room with Eli, it didn't just remove something from me. It woke me up. It relit something. And I don't care who rolls their eyes at that. I know what my life felt like before, and I know what it felt like after. It was a turning point, a resurrection, honestly. And I'm still grateful, deeply grateful, that there are people out there willing to step into the frightening, invisible parts of other people's suffering. The parts that get mocked, the parts that get dismissed, the parts you're told are just in your head while you're drowning. Some people choose to walk toward that darkness anyway, carefully, bravely, so someone like me can find their way back. Okay, so this is one of those things I've told a few people over the years, and every time I say it out loud, I still get that same weird, cold little twist in my stomach. It was early summer, 2017. not long before it really starts staying light late into the evening. I remember it was a Tuesday because I had had a pretty ordinary day, and I was doing that familiar drive back toward Frome, coming from Wells instead of Shepton Mallet. The sky was in that golden, end of day but not dark yet stage, you know? Still bright, clear visibility, nothing dramatic about the weather at all. And then I came around a bend, and something up ahead just grabbed my attention so hard, it felt like my whole body clicked into alert mode. Right there in the distance, above the tree line, was what looked, honestly, exactly like a tall, dark tower block. A proper rectangular silhouette, and it had these rows of glowing orange squares, like windows lit up from inside. They weren't steady either. They flickered in that unmistakable way fire flickers. Not like a reflection, not like the sun hitting something. It looked structured, built, real, like a high-rise burning. My first reaction was panic. Immediate, instinctive panic. Because the only thing my brain could label it as was a tower block of flats on fire. I slowed down and started trying to figure out where it could even be, whether I needed to turn off, whether there was some way to get closer or call for help. And then, just a few seconds later, this other thought hit me, hard. There aren't any tall buildings out there. Not like that. Not anywhere near that stretch. No skyline. No blocks of flats. Nothing even close to the size and shape of what I was staring at. As soon as that sank in, the panic drained away and got replaced by confusion. Like, wait, what am I looking at then? I kept driving, and it kept showing up through gaps in the trees. Every time it reappeared, it looked the same. That tall, black silhouette, those glowing orange windows, that flickering firelight effect. And the strangest part was how it behaved in the distance. It stayed in the same place on the horizon. It didn't seem to get closer, didn't drift away. It was just there, on and off for a few miles. My partner Ellie was with me, and this matters because I wasn't quietly spiraling in my own head. Ellie saw it too. We both reacted at the same moment. Both went, "What the hell is that?" We described it the same way without prompting each other, like a burning tower, windows lit orange, flickering like flames. We kept checking it, trying to catch a clean view, trying to line up where it must be. I remember thinking, if I can just get to an open stretch, I'll finally see it properly and this will make sense. So I followed the road the way I thought would give the clearest angle. And then, this is the part that still messes with me. It wasn't that it faded. It didn't stretch into a cloud shape. It didn't dim like a reflection would. It was simply gone. Like someone had just removed it. One moment it was there, the next moment it wasn't. No transition, no explanation. When we got home that night, I went straight into detective mode. I searched for fire reports. I checked local news. I scrolled social media. I tried different search terms. Fire near Frome. Smoke scene a road. Anything. Nothing. No reports, no photos, no emergency response chatter. And we hadn't seen smoke in the sky either. No sirens. No glow on the ground. Nothing to match something that looked that big. Then the next morning, the TV was already on downstairs. I came in half asleep, glanced up, and my stomach dropped. Because on the screen was news coverage of the Grenfell Tower fire in London. And visually, just visually, it was the first thing I'd ever seen that matched what I'd been trying to understand the night before. That dark tower shape, the orange glowing window patterns, that flickering, fire-lit look. I want to be really clear about something, because I'm not trying to make it into something it isn't. I'm not saying I saw Grenfell. I'm not claiming anything supernatural or connected. The timing doesn't even match. It was hours earlier than the London fire started. I'm only telling you why it lodged itself in my mind so deeply. Because suddenly there was this real-world image that looked eerily like the thing we'd seen, and it made it impossible to just shrug off. That day was awful, obviously, because the news was horrifying. And then I had this private, confusing experience sitting on top of it like a weight. Talking to people felt strange. When I cautiously mentioned what I'd seen, some people suggested it was a trick of light, or a mirage, or just my brain pattern matching. A couple of people even said the word hallucination, which, honestly, made me question myself for a while. But I always come back to one simple fact. I wasn't alone. Ellie was with me the entire time. Ellie saw it too. Same timing, same reaction, same description, same, that looks like a burning tower instinct. We talked about it as it was happening, and even now, years later, when we describe it separately, the details still line up. So whatever it wasn't just in my head. And that's why I'm telling you this. Because I would genuinely love a rational explanation. I want one. I think it would actually be a relief. For context, this was along the A361, heading toward Frome, near the stretch of hill and dual carriageway leading up to the Nunny Catch roundabout. Give or take a bit, because it's been years, but that's the area. And I still wonder, has anyone else ever had a shared, crystal-clear visual experience? Something you both saw at the same time that made absolutely no sense and never got explained? This all happened out near the Olympic Woods, over a few years, starting around 2021, and honestly, it was one of the messiest seasons of my life. I was losing pieces of myself. Everything I thought I had under control, my body, my mind, my plans, just slid right out from under me. And yeah, I'm the kind of guy who tries to reason things out first. I'm not a follower, never have been. I keep my distance from institutions, from official stories, from people telling me what's true. I've always leaned toward freedom and solitude. So when weird things started happening out there, green pulsing lights, shapes where there shouldn't be shapes, faces seeming to press out of bark like the trees were watching back, I fought myself hard not to jump to conclusions. But I also couldn't pretend it wasn't happening. Before any of the strangest stuff, I need to tell you something heavy, because it matters. A few months before my big accident, I was done. Like, done. I had a handgun in my hand. I'd already made peace with it in my head, closed my eyes, thought about my kids first. Then I thought about my animals, what they'd do if they found me like that. And my finger was where it shouldn't have been. And then my phone rang. I ignored it at first, but it kept going. And something, call it instinct, call it the universe, call it whatever you want, made me open my eyes and look. It was my aunt, Mara. I hadn't spoken to her in years. We weren't close. We weren't even okay. But I answered, and she talked me down, piece by piece, like she was holding my face in her hands through the phone. I'm still here because she called. I still don't fully understand why she did that night, or why I picked up. Even now, that dark thought visits, not as a plan, more like a shadow that sometimes crosses the room. But I know what it is now. I know I can survive it. And the thing is, I'd already died once before all this. It was late 2021, one night close to midnight. Blood clot, heart event. Then everything went sideways. Lungs, seizures, the whole nightmare chain reaction. I remember the moment I wasn't here anymore, and I'm telling you straight, whatever is on the other side felt clean, quiet, like taking off a heavy pack you didn't realize you'd been carrying your whole life. Then, after that, it was like my body kept rolling dice it shouldn't have survived. a stroke not long after, then a nasty infection, MRSA, turning into sepsis. People don't always come back from that. Somehow, I did. And before all of that, my back had already betrayed me. Surgery, pain, working myself into the ground, juggling too much, trying to hold up a life that was already collapsing, custody stress, court stress, money stress, no sleep, no room to breathe, just grind, grind, grind until something inside you snaps. Then came the part that still stings the most in a regular human way. I lost my housing. Fast. Like the world decided I didn't get to pause. I sold the place I'd fought for and watched the money drain into other hands. And suddenly, I was living out of a beat-up motorhome with nowhere steady to put it. For a while, I hid out in the mountains near a tiny Oregon town. Then later, I found a rough patch of land outside a place called Hoodsport. Getting the rig up that driveway was pure misery. I'm not exaggerating when I tell you I spent nearly a week tilted like I was about to roll, sleeping crooked, eating like an animal, trying to keep my nerves from snapping. Then winter hit. I got frostbite. I'd collapse into the snow and just lie there, face down, too tired to move, begging for an ending that wouldn't come. I made torches out of whatever I had, clothes, fuel, branches, just to move around at night. I had a run-in with a cougar close enough to make my skin crawl even now. And around then, I saw the first green light. Not like a flashlight, not like a reflection, like a living pulse, hovering where it shouldn't hover, breathing green in the dark. I told myself I was exhausted, that my brain was misfiring, that survival does weird things to perception. But it didn't stop. Later, after I'd scraped my way into something that resembled stability, I had a night that still sits in my chest like a stone. I was sitting out on my porch in the pitch-black forest, alone. No streetlight, no neighbor glow, just trees and blackness. I clicked on my flashlight, expecting nothing. And there, against the woods, was the outline of a woman's face. Not a full body, just a face, huge, like it was pressed into the air itself. 2 feet across, maybe. The weirdest part was how it looked camouflaged, like it was trying to be invisible, blending with the leaves and shadows. But once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. Her eyes were closed, calm, almost solemn. And on her forehead were 3 dots in a triangle, 2 low, 1 above. I shut the light off. My heart was hammering. I waited, told myself, okay, breathe. You're imagining it. Then I turned it back on. Still there, clearer even. I'm not religious. I don't do church. I don't do God the way people mean it most of the time. But I do talk to the universe sometimes. I meditate. I pay attention to nature because nature doesn't lie. And for reasons I can't explain, that face pulled my mind toward this old story I'd read once, about a kind of mother of the world figure from India. I won't pretend I'm an expert. I'm not. But the description I found later, this idea of something feminine showing up when chaos hits, something tied to nature, felt uncomfortably aligned with the state I was in. I never decided what she was, just that she was there. Then came the accident. There'd been an emergency call. Someone hurt up on the mountain, and rescuers lost signal. I knew the terrain better than most people, and I had a heavy ATV, the kind that could crawl where other vehicles couldn't. So I went looking. I remember trying to edge away from a drop-off, and then the machine started tipping. Slow at first, like a nightmare in delayed motion. Then there was no stopping it. I tried to jump. Didn't matter. I went down and ended up underneath it. Rocks below, weight above. The engine still running, heat burning into my hip. My body folded in a way a body isn't meant to fold. I knew my leg was shattered without even looking. I couldn't move the machine. I could barely breathe right. I screamed until my voice broke. Hours, sun dropping, sweat pouring out of me until I was empty and shaking. And the only reason I'm alive is because a guy and his little kid, who weren't even sure why they'd wandered that direction, heard something that didn't sound right, and followed it. They lifted the ATV enough to free me, then ran for help. I was left there alone again, in the dark coming in, trying to line up a leg that felt like it wasn't attached right anymore, like it was made of wet rope. Animals moved somewhere nearby, branches, rustling. And I'll admit it, I thought about ending it right there. I was carrying a sidearm. It would have been easy. Instead, I fired a shot into the night to scare whatever was out there away. Eventually, I saw headlights. Paramedics. Relief that didn't feel like relief yet, because the pain was still everything. The local hospital took me in anyway. Midnight-ish. Still no real pain control until I was already drowning in it. X-rays, surgery. More damage than they first saw. Plates, rods, stitches. Long cuts down my leg to relieve pressure. Weeks of immobility. Then a rehab facility that didn't want to let me go because I had nowhere safe. When I finally got back, my place had been invaded by mice. My bed, my space, everything. And I was trapped there with a broken leg, no transport, and no money. That's when the normal world would have been enough to break most people. But out there, it didn't stop at normal. Months later, I was working in the woods near my spot, trying to carve out a path for a small shed I wanted to build. There's a spring-fed stream nearby, and I noticed this hole, like a tunnel mouth. Not huge, but big enough to feel wrong, like the earth had a throat. I started digging a ditch to guide water into a low spot. Thought I could make a little pool. And then the ground opened, like it gave up, like it sighed and collapsed. Water dumped in like a drain pulled in a bathtub. Insects poured out. This sour, ancient smell rolled up from below. Wet stone and rot and something else I can't name. It connected to that other tunnel. A cave system. Under my feet. Under my life. I tried to stuff it closed with rocks and logs, but you can't really argue with the ground when it decides to open. Later that same day, I went up to a place I call my sanctuary. Upstream, waterfalls, a calmer pocket of woods where I'd been shaping a natural pool. And I saw movement. Something dark, quick, threading between trees above me. I looked forward again and realized I wasn't alone. There were shapes around me, humanoid but not solid, like heat shimmer, like the outline of something wearing invisibility. If you've ever seen the Predator movie, it looked like that. Translucent, cloaked, barely there until your eyes caught the distortion. My dog froze, tail straight, alert like a spear. Then she bolted, chasing something into the trees. I grabbed my pistol without even thinking. Not dramatic, just reflex. The air felt wrong, heavy, like something was leaning in. I'd seen one of those shimmering figures once before, the previous winter, and that time it felt almost neutral, like it was observing. There'd been that green pulsing light nearby then too, but this time felt different, crowded, pressuring, like I'd stepped into the wrong room. So I left. That night I cracked a frozen window behind my couch to smoke, and the feeling came back hard. And then I started hearing it. Branches snapping on both sides of my place. Not little twigs, big breaks. Like something strong was moving through trees without caring if it made noise. Every few minutes. For hours. Then tapping. Metallic. Not random wind stuff. It felt deliberate. Like something testing my walls. I fired a warning shot into the hillside. Not at anything I could see, just to say, I'm here. Don't come closer. It didn't matter. The sounds kept going, and I didn't sleep. Instead, I started searching online, trying to find anything that matched what I'd seen. And I fell into a rabbit hole I didn't even know existed. Reports of glimmer beings, cloaked shapes, people calling them glimmermen, stories tied to wilderness disappearances, maps full of clusters near water and caves and national forest land. And I remember sitting there, screen glow on my face, feeling my throat tighten, tears I didn't expect, because I realized the terrifying part wasn't, I'm imagining this. The terrifying part was, what if I'm not? For weeks after that, I barely stepped outside. Not more than a few steps from my door. Not at night. Not unless I had to. And then the weather turned ugly anyway. Snow and cold that kept the world locked down. I found a strange, scratched circle in the dirt near the house. And a face in a tree. One of those bark pattern things that suddenly looks like a staring expression. But this one wasn't there before. And once you see it, it feels like it's still there, even when you look away. After that, life kept grinding me down in normal ways too. Vehicles failing, being stranded again, trying to survive with a leg that wasn't fully mine anymore. But the other stuff kept threading through it. Objects moved, things appearing where I swear they hadn't been. Branches planted upright like someone placed them. Little odd gifts left in my garden beds. And the energy, this is the strangest part. It didn't always feel violent. Sometimes it felt almost childish, like curiosity, like something wanting attention. And I know how that sounds. I do. I've had weird experiences my whole life, things that don't fit neatly into the world people agree on. But those years on that mountain, that was the loudest it's ever been, the most relentless. Like the wilderness wasn't just wilderness anymore. It was a living, watching thing. And I'll be honest with you, somewhere in all of it, I lost parts of my mind. Or maybe I found parts I didn't want to meet. I've done things in my past I'm not proud of. I've carried guilt like a second spine. And sometimes I wonder if this is what it looks like when life forces you to face yourself. When it strips you down until you're just a human animal in the woods, trying to make meaning out of pain. Here's what I know for sure. I don't fear death the way I used to. I've stared at it too many times. Heart failure, infection, being pinned under metal on rocks in the dark, predators in the trees, real ones with claws and teeth. I've lived around cougars and coyotes and wolves, and I've had half-wild cats curled up close enough to feel their breath at night. Fear doesn't own me the way it used to, but uncertainty. That's the harder one, because sometimes I think that woman's face, the one in the forest, had something to do with the accident. Not as punishment, more like a hard course correction. Like life grabbing me by the collar and turning me back toward something I'd forgotten. And what I keep coming back to is this. Out there, away from cities and noise and distractions, you start to feel how thin reality is, how much we ignore, how much our ancestors probably noticed because they had to. In modern life, we chase comfort. Out there, you chase truth. Or at least, you chase what's real enough to keep you alive. Lately, things have been quieter. I meditate every day. I try to stay steady. I'm still fighting the system stuff, paperwork, disability claims, scraping by on temporary assistance, waiting on decisions that can change your whole life with a single letter. And I can't tell you what the universe wants from me. Some days it feels like it wants me to surrender. Other days it feels like it wants me to stay stubborn and alive out of sheer spite. All I know is, I'm still here. And even when nothing dramatic is happening, even when it's quiet, there are 1,000 tiny moments that don't make sense until you look back and realize they were connecting into something. So that's why I'm telling you, not to convince you, just so someone else knows what it felt like to live through it. Okay, So I've got to start by saying this. As a kid, my brain was basically a horror movie factory. When I was little, like elementary school through early teens, I used to see and hear the weirdest stuff. Shadowy shapes that looked like they were sliding down the stairs. A tall, washed-out woman just standing at the foot of my bed. And sometimes I'd hear someone say my name super clearly, like right by my ear. But honestly, I'm pretty sure a lot of it was me. I was a scared, anxious kid who loved creepy stories, and I was alone in the house a lot because my mom worked late. So I'd sit there, listening to every tiny sound, asking myself 1,000 what-if questions until my stomach hurt. We lived in this tiny, older apartment. Creaky wood floors, thin walls, pipes that knocked like they were mad at you. Everything groaned and shifted and popped, and my imagination just filled in the blanks. And our building had this heavy feeling to it. The unit next to ours had this awful story attached to it. My mom used to whisper about it to my aunt like it was something you weren't supposed to say out loud. The neighbor, a woman named Mary Ann, passed away in there, and nobody realized for a long time. Weeks. And her adult son, Eli, who needed a lot of help, was still inside the apartment because he didn't understand what to do or how to get help. Even typing that out makes my skin prickle. Then after that, someone else moved in. This quiet lady named Saskia, and she lasted like barely a month, and then she just vanished. Not moved out, vanished. Her stuff was still there, her shoes by the door, a coat on a hook, even her little dog's leash hanging on a chair like she'd be right back. But she never came back. So yeah, that place already felt haunted, even before my brain started making its own special effects. I lived there until I was about 15, and then we moved. And the move should have ended everything. We ended up in this really modern 3-story house in a clean, bright neighborhood. New wiring, smooth floors, none of that old building creaking. It didn't smell like dust and damp wood. It smelled like paint and laundry detergent. It felt normal. My room was on the top floor, tucked away next to a storage room, with my own little bathroom right there. For the first time in my life, I felt like I could breathe at night, like I didn't have to be on high alert. And the weird stuff, the shadows, the voices, stopped. I started sleeping better. I stopped checking corners. I stopped flinching when a cabinet popped or the house settled. I thought I'd outgrown it. And then, one night, about a year ago, so I'm 19 now and I was 18 then, it happened. It was late, around 11. Everybody was asleep. The house was quiet in that way where you can hear the refrigerator humming and your own footsteps feel too loud. I remember I wanted something small, like cereal or chips, I don't even know. I just remember being half awake and craving a snack. So I open my door and step out, and I start going down the first set of stairs, from the top floor down to the second floor where my parents' room is. Their door was shut. Everything was dark, no movement, just that sleepy, safe silence. And I keep going down to the next set of stairs, the ones that lead to the main floor. So as I'm going down, I glance at that door, and I see a face. A woman's face. She's peeking around the edge of the door, like she's playing some kind of game. And I swear to you, I saw it so clearly that my brain didn't even have time to decide if it was scary yet. She was pale, like sickly pale. Her eyes were wide open, like she was trying not to blink. And her mouth was pulled into this big, stretched smile that didn't look happy. It looked strained, wrong, like the smile was being held in place. Her hair was long and thin and kind of stringy, hanging down like she'd been standing in the rain and never dried off. And the second my eyes locked on her, she snapped back behind the door. Just gone, like she'd been caught. I stopped dead on the stairs. And here's the part that freaks me out the most. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I didn't even feel that jolt of panic right away. I just froze, like my whole body went quiet. I stood there for what felt like a full minute, staring at that door, telling myself, "You're tired. You imagined it. You're halfway asleep. Don't be dramatic." Then I forced myself to move. I went down the rest of the steps, slowly, like if I moved too fast I'd make it real. I looked into the hallway, looked into the kitchen. Nothing. The door was still there. The house was still quiet. Everyone was still asleep. No one. But I have never been able to shake it. Because all the stuff I saw as a kid always had this dreamlike quality, like foggy shapes, faceless figures, stuff that even in the moment felt kind of unreal. This was different. This looked like an actual person. Like I could have described her wrinkles, the texture of her skin, the way the light caught the curve of her cheek. It had that awful, specific realism, pores and all, that you don't get from a blurry childhood fear. And I haven't seen her again. Not once. But every time I walk down those stairs at night, I feel it. That little hesitation, that instinct to keep my eyes forward. Because part of me is terrified that I'll glance at that door and she'll be there again, peeking like she's been waiting. I've never been the type to truly believe in paranormal stuff. Like, I'm the first person to say, "It was your imagination," or "Your brain was tired." But after that, I started looking things up, just out of curiosity at first, and I found people talking about this exact kind of thing. Like this idea of a peeking presence, something that watches from behind door frames or around corners. And now I'm stuck with this question that I hate even saying out loud. Am I losing it? Or did something follow me? So, I've been searching for years, honestly, just trying to find anyone who's been through something even close to what I've experienced. I've seen people talk about tapping on windows, sure, but the way it happens to me has always felt different. And I've put off telling the story forever because it's hard to explain, and it makes me feel stupidly scared, even just saying it out loud. I think it started when I was about 13, maybe 14. That was also the start of a really rough stretch in my life, which I bring up because sometimes I wonder if that matters. But the first time it happened, I remember it so clearly. I'd be lying in bed at night, not at any specific time, just night, and I'd hear 3 sharp taps on my bedroom window. Always 3. Not a scratching sound, not a branch brushing glass. 3 clean, precise knocks. The best way I can describe it is fingernails, like the hard edge of nails clicking against the pane. I've even tried to recreate it before by tapping on things myself, and I can get close, but when it happens for real, it's colder, sharper, like it has intention. And the fear that hits me, it's immediate, like my whole body locks up before my brain even catches up. I'd go totally still, heart pounding, skin prickling, like someone just dumped ice water through my veins. I've been scared in my life, obviously, but nothing feels like that. It's not normal fear. It's like something in me recognizes it as wrong. Before anyone asks, yeah, I was on the first floor. And no, there weren't trees or bushes near the window. No vines, no branches, nothing that could reach it. Just a mostly empty backyard. We had 2 dogs back then too, Rusty and Miso, usually outside or hanging out in the garage, and the garage had a door that opened into the yard. I keep coming back to that detail because it feels like they should have reacted, right? Barked, growled, at least moved. But I don't remember them reacting at all. Not once. The tapping kept happening for years, and what made it worse is that it had no pattern, no schedule, nothing I could tie it to. Sometimes it wouldn't happen for weeks, and I'd almost start to feel like maybe it was over. And then one night, 3 taps. Other times I'd spend a whole week thinking about it non-stop, dreading bedtime, basically bracing for it every night. And nothing. Like it refused to follow my expectations. Completely random. Which somehow made it feel more deliberate. I know how this sounds, so I'll say this. I'm not the only one who heard it. My friend Lena slept over once, back when we were in high school, and it happened. I remember looking at her in the dark like, please tell me you heard that. And she just whispered, yeah. She was pale, quiet, not joking. My mom also claimed she heard it one night when I fell asleep on the couch. Behind the couch was this huge sliding glass door. Same deal, 3 taps, sharp and fast. She didn't make a big thing of it, but the way she said it wasn't like she was humoring me. Here's the part that people always ask about. Did I look? No, I never looked. I just couldn't. I'd lie there staring at the ceiling, eyes wide open, terrified that if I turned my head, even a little, I would see something I couldn't unsee. And my imagination was bad enough already. I didn't want to feed it anything real. There was one time, though. One stupid, brave, awful time, when I did something back, and immediately it started tapping again. Fast, frantic, aggressive. Not 3 taps, not neat, just rapid fire, like someone drumming fingernails against the glass. I shot out of bed, and I swear, this is the part that still makes my stomach flip. I felt like it tracked me, like the tapping shifted with where I was in the room. I moved left, and it sounded like it moved. I moved again, and it matched me, like it knew exactly where I was. I bolted out of the room and went straight to my parents, half crying, half furious at myself for answering it. My dad went outside with a flashlight, checked the yard, checked the fence line. Nothing. No footprints, no broken branches, no prankster friend hiding behind something. Just darkness and quiet. I had to go back to my room afterward, which felt horrible, like walking back into a place that didn't belong to me anymore. But it didn't come back that night. After that, I made myself a promise. Don't engage. Don't challenge it. Don't acknowledge it. Pretend it doesn't exist. Here's the problem, though. If it was just the house, some weird settling sound, some pressure thing with windows, whatever, you'd expect it to stop when I moved. It didn't. It followed me. Not to every place, but to enough that I can't shrug it off as one specific window with one specific issue. I moved a few times as I got older. One apartment, then another. I even lived in Japan for a while. Small place, different building, different everything. And it still happened there at least once. Same 3 taps, same icy terror. Now I'm living in my in-laws' house. Very religious, very bless this home, crosses on the wall, the whole vibe. And it hasn't happened here yet, which should make me feel better, but instead it's like I keep waiting for it to remember where I am. The last time I heard it was before my son was born. It's been about 2 years. For a while, I let myself hope it had finally moved on. Like maybe it lost interest. Like maybe I outgrew it. But the past few days, I've been having non-stop nightmares. Not even always about tapping, just heavy, ugly, relentless dreams where I wake up tense and sweating. And there's this feeling under it all, this awful certainty in my chest, like something is approaching. I hate saying that because it sounds dramatic, but it's the truth. It feels like the calm right before something returns. And I've tried, believe me, to talk myself into a rational explanation. Anxiety, depression, stress, some kind of sleep-related thing. I want it to be that. I want it to be my brain playing tricks on me. But I keep coming back to the fact that I wasn't the only one who heard it. So I'm telling you, finally, because I need to know, has anyone else ever dealt with something like this? 3 taps, fingernail sharp, random, followed across places, and that horrible, unmistakable feeling that whatever it is, wants you to notice it. So, there's this little college tucked into the hills in northern Maryland, just a few miles below the Pennsylvania line. When you drive in, it looks like it belongs on a postcard. Stone buildings, big trees, that kind of calm, old-world quiet. The campus is called St. Bridget's College, and right behind it, up the slope at a higher elevation, is this shrine people come to visit. Locals just call it the Grotto. And here's the thing. During the day, it's all peaceful. You'll see visitors walking slowly, hands folded, whispering prayers. But at night, well, at night, the place feels like it remembers too much. I went there in the early 90s, 91 to 95, and back then, the whole area was still mostly rural. Cornfields, narrow roads, fog settling low in the mornings. The kind of place where sound carries, and silence has weight. Also, this is the funny part, or the embarrassing part. Our sweet little school somehow ended up on those party school lists. Like, consistently. People love to pretend it was all rosaries and theology, but honestly, the place was marinated in alcohol. That was the vibe. Half holy ground, half hold my beer. Anyway, I didn't learn the ghost stories right away. Those came from a priest named Father Martin Keene. Warm guy, twinkly eyes, always seemed like he had a story loaded and ready. Every Halloween, he'd do this unofficial greatest hits of strange things that had happened on campus. Not dramatic like a campfire storyteller, more like he was remembering old neighbors. And there's one story he told that stuck with me in a way I still don't fully love. I lived in a dorm called Donovan Hall. Weird little stroke of luck. I had the only single room on my floor. Which sounds great until you realize a single room is also a lot of alone time in an old building, at night, with pipes that sigh and radiators that knock like they're trying to start a conversation. I saw some odd stuff in that room. Shadows that didn't feel like shadows, movement in the corner of my eye. But I'm going to be completely honest with you. I was not living like a monk. I had a phase where I thought I was experimenting, and I kept, let's call it a questionable amount of substances around. So anytime I saw anything weird, I automatically filed it under, yeah, okay, that's probably on you. So I really tried not to spook myself. But then Father Keene told us this. Back in the late 60s, someone on our wing had taken their own life. It happened over a break when the building was nearly empty, so the body wasn't discovered right away. And apparently, the person had left a radio playing. Father Keene said that sometimes, when the dorm is vacant, like over winter break, you can walk down that hallway and hear music. Not footsteps, not whispers, just late 60s radio hits, faint and tinny, as if a door is closed somewhere and you're hearing it leak through the cracks. Here's the part that made everybody go still. They never told us which room. So if you lived on that wing, you spent the rest of your time there doing this quiet math in your head, counting doors, remembering who lived where, wondering if you were sleeping 10 feet from the story. Now, that's one category of strange. There were others, lighter in a way. One of the most famous, friendly presences was this woman people claimed to see wandering the grounds. An old-fashioned dress, a bonnet you couldn't miss. The kind of outfit that doesn't belong in the 1990s unless you're in a reenactment, like it was normal, like you were greeting an old friend. Then there was the scary room story, Father Keene's personal favorite, or maybe the one he hated the most, was room 248 in Bruton Hall. That had been his room when he was a seminarian, years earlier. He described all the classic stuff, Objects moved when no one was there, books sliding off shelves. The feeling of walking into your own room and realizing the air had changed. He said he tried to ignore it, tried to outpray it, out-stubborn it, out-rationalize it. But the night that finally cracked him was this. He woke up to the slow creak of his bathroom door opening. Not a bang, not a swing, a careful, deliberate opening, like somebody was trying not to wake him. And then, the bathroom light flickered on. And then, this part always gave me chills. Everything in the room shut off at once. Light, sound, the hum of electricity, like the whole place had exhaled and gone dead. He moved out after that. Eventually, the building became regular dorm rooms, but he said students kept finding him for years afterward, because whatever was happening in that room didn't stop when he left. And then, then there was the one he called the nun's room. He wouldn't even give a room number. He just said it was so bad, it got sealed, like physically closed off. And when I was there, he claimed it was still sealed, still shut, still avoided. Like the school had agreed, quietly, that some doors didn't need to be opened again. He told that one slower than all the others. Less joking, like he didn't want to give it too much oxygen. There were smaller stories too, the kind that spread around campus and get retold with that half-laugh people use when they're pretending they're not nervous. There was Mother Imogen, this spirit some students swore would tidy up after you. Like if your room was a disaster, you'd come back and find things oddly arranged. Not perfectly clean, just corrected. Like someone disapproved of your mess and couldn't help themselves. People said she wore an old-style habit and that you'd hear a soft knock at doors, as if she was making rounds. There was the Confederate soldier, a quiet figure seen at the edge of campus, walking like he had somewhere to be and didn't care who was watching. No dramatic chains or moaning, just this steady, lonely pacing through the dark. And then there was my favorite story. Not because it's scary, but because it's almost sweet until you think about it too hard. They said once a year or so, a student would hit a breaking point. A new student usually. Homesick, alienated, maybe convinced they didn't belong there. The kind of person you can spot because they're trying to disappear. And a priest, kindly, older, with a beard, would somehow appear. Like right when the student was ready to quit. He'd sit with them, listen, say exactly what they needed to hear, and send them back with this steady, calm confidence. The student would wake up the next day with a completely different outlook, like something in them had reset. And then, eventually, they described the priest to someone who'd been around longer. And the older student would say, very gently, "Oh, you met Father Andrew." And when the new kid asked who that was, the answer would come, "He died years ago." So the joke was, "Congratulations, you just got life-changing encouragement from a ghost." And honestly, if there's a haunting you're going to have, that's not the worst one. Anyway, those are the ones I remember. And I'll be the first to admit, time messes with details. Stories get polished, edges get rounded, pieces get lost. Just smile a little and say hello. So, I need to tell you this like I'd tell a friend sitting across from me, because that's the only way it comes out right. When I was little, my family swore I had this weird, paranormal streak. Like talking to people who weren't there, or reacting to things that made adults go quiet and exchange looks. There was even a story I grew up hearing. Apparently, when I was a baby, something unseen knocked a couple toys clean out of the crib like they'd been thrown. No one made some big dramatic deal out of it, though. It was more like, that's odd. And life moved on. I moved on too. Mostly. But there's this feeling I get sometimes, and it's hard to explain without sounding like I'm trying to make myself into some kind of movie character. It's not like hearing voices or seeing shadows in corners. It's just a pull. Deep inside my chest, like something invisible hooks itself around my ribs and tugs. Like my body knows something before my brain catches up. The first time I remember it clearly, I was 8. My grandpa, let's call him Ray, had cancer. Everyone knew it was bad, but it wasn't one of those "this is the day" situations. We were visiting, doing the whole family rotation, one by one, saying our goodbyes just in case, but no one was acting like we were minutes away from anything. When it was my turn, I went into his room alone. He looked tired in that way that makes you feel small, like you're watching someone fade in real time. I sat there, and at first it was normal. Quiet, awkward, kid brain trying to figure out what you're supposed to say when you're 8 and your grandpa is sick. And then, that pull hit me. It was sudden. Not pain, not fear, just this heavy, sick certainty. Like the air in the room shifted and my body went, "Something's coming. Something's coming right now." I didn't understand it, not really. I just felt yanked inward, like my chest had a string tied to it and someone was tugging the other end. I left the room a minute or two later, because what else do you do? I went back out to where everyone was, trying to act normal, but my stomach felt wrong. Less than 5 minutes later, everything changed. Someone rushed in. Voices got sharp. People stood up too fast. And I found out he'd suddenly woken up, said something about his mom, like he was seeing her, like he was going to her. And then he was just gone. It was unexpected. It was fast. And that pull in my chest stayed with me, like my body was trying to say, "See, this is what I mean." The second time was years later. I don't remember my exact age, but I was somewhere in that early teen zone, old enough to be stubborn, young enough to think I was invincible. My dad, Darren, has diabetes. He'd had rough days before, but nothing that ever felt like an emergency in my brain. That night I was up late, doing what teenagers do. Not sleeping, sneaking snacks, messing with the TV volume so no one woke up. I'd stolen the remote and was watching something I probably wasn't supposed to. And then, that feeling came back. Same pull, same sudden heaviness. Like my chest tightened and my whole body went alert before I even knew why. And right after that, this loud thud. I froze. You know that moment where everything inside you goes silent and you're listening with your whole body? That was me. I ran out and found him. He'd crashed, blood sugar so low it was terrifying. He was barely responsive. It wasn't dramatic the way movies do it. It was worse because it was real, quiet and wrong and urgent. The adults later told me I basically saved his life. That if I hadn't found him when I did, if it had been even a few more minutes, he might not have made it, like my body knew. The third time was when I was 16, barely 16, still half kid, half ready to fight the world. My childhood pet, Pippin, had been sick for a while. Not, "he's going to die tonight" sick. More like, "we should keep an eye on him" sick. The kind where everyone's worried but also trying to stay hopeful. That night didn't seem like the night. Nothing dramatic happened, no big warning. And then, there it was again, the pull. And with it, this frantic energy that felt like my brain caught fire. I started begging my parents, like full-on pleading. I remember hearing my own voice sounding way too intense, like I jumped onto some invisible train and couldn't get off. I said something like, "I can feel it. We have to take him in. If we don't, he's going to die soon." I even tried to grab him and leave, like I could just outrun whatever was coming. My parents stopped me, thank God, because I was not in a normal headspace. And later that night, early morning really, he passed. After that, I stopped trying to treat this like a coincidence. 3 times is a pattern. At least it feels like one. Which brings me to the reason I'm even telling you any of this. I'm 17 now, and I met someone recently, long distance, the kind of connection that sneaks up on you, and then suddenly you're sitting there thinking, oh, this is real. I actually care about this person in a way that scares me. Let's call him Eli. We traded numbers for emergencies, like if our main app went down or something serious happened, we'd still have a way to reach each other. Normal couple-ish planning, nothing spooky. Except when his contact popped up, it showed his full name, and I didn't know his last name yet. It wasn't like a huge secret or anything, we just hadn't gotten to that point. But seeing it all spelled out like that made my stomach drop, because the moment I read it, that pull happened again. Not panic exactly, more like a signal, like my chest tightened and something inside me went, pay attention. And the thought that hit me was so strange I almost didn't want to admit it to myself, that I was supposed to have that information, like I was supposed to be able to reach him, like I was meant to keep him here. Because here's the other context. Eli struggles mentally. He has dark days. And since meeting him, there have been a few moments where I've talked him down, where I've stayed up and messaged him through the worst of it, where I've said the right thing at the right time without knowing how I found it. And maybe that's just what people do when they care. Maybe I'm not sensing anything supernatural at all. Maybe I'm just observant. Maybe I'm just scared of losing people, so my brain searches for patterns like it's trying to build safety out of randomness. But I can't shake the timing. I can't shake how the feeling always shows up like a knock on the inside of my ribs, like something leaning close and whispering, "Not yet. Go. Now." And I hate how heavy it feels, because if I'm wrong, then I'm just being dramatic. But if I'm right, then it's like I'm walking around with this invisible alarm inside me, and it only goes off when something precious is about to slip away. And now there's someone precious who's far away. So yeah, that's what's been sitting in my chest lately. Not a ghost story, just a pull. Hey, before I start, I just want to give you a heads up. This story touches on mental health and suicidal thoughts. So, good evening. At least, it's evening as I'm sitting here writing this, but I'm going to tell it like I'm talking to you across a kitchen table. My name is Maya, and I'm 42 now. And for as long as I can remember, I've had this thing. Dreams that don't feel like dreams. Moments when I know something before it happens. Sometimes I hear things too, voices or impressions. Line a radio station nobody else can tune into. On my mom's side of the family, they didn't call it intuition. They didn't call it sensitivity. They called it evil. They said it was the devil trying to get a hold of me. And when I was a teenager, they ended up having me committed because they thought I was having psychotic episodes. But for me, it didn't start as something dark. It started when I was little, like 5. I remember telling my mom so matter-of-factly, an angel took me to heaven, and I got to choose which brother I'd be raised with. She stared at me like I'd spoken another language, and I told her exactly what I'd seen. A bright light, this calm feeling, and 3 babies. 3. And somehow I just knew they were my brothers, but I'd only grow up with one of them. My mom didn't say much that night. A week later, she found out she was pregnant. Now, my parents had been divorced since I was 2. So later in life, it made this strange kind of sense. My mom ended up having 1 son, and my biological dad went on to have 2 more. 3 brothers. That was the first time I realized the things in my head didn't always stay in my head. And it just kept happening. When I was 15, I started having nightmares about my grandmother's sister. Let's call her Marla. In the dreams, she was driving to visit for the holidays, and there was this horrible crash I couldn't shake. I told my mom and my grandma, and they got angry. Told me not to say things like that. Told me I was letting demons speak through me. Then one morning my grandma said, real casual, "Marla left early. She should be here by dinner." A few hours later, I'm sitting there playing a little handheld game, half in my own world, when I look up, and I swear to you, I saw her. Not like a memory, not like imagination, like she was there, standing in the doorway, watching me. She didn't speak. She just walked past me toward my sister's room, then turned back and smiled. This small, gentle smile. And then she was gone. I ran to my mom, shaking, and I said, "Mom, she's dead." And I got punished for it. Hard. Not long after that, the phone rang, and it was real, and it was exactly what I'd said. That was the moment something inside me broke. I felt like if I kept knowing things, people would keep dying, and it would somehow be my fault. I didn't want to be me anymore. I tried to hurt myself. I woke up the next day, alive, confused, and honestly embarrassed, and my mom decided that was it. I needed help. And that's how I ended up in a mental health facility, being told I was sick, being medicated, being watched, like I was dangerous. And maybe I was dangerous, to myself at least. There's another moment I think about a lot. I was on a day pass once, visiting my grandparents. My aunt, let's call her Kendra, was crying because a doctor told her she couldn't have kids. And I had this dream, so clear it felt like someone had handed me a photograph. Kendra, holding 2 little boys. So I told her, I said, "You're going to have kids. 2 boys." A few months later, Kendra found out she was pregnant. And later, she had 1 boy. Then she had another, 2 sons. After that, I learned to keep my mouth shut. Because even when I was right, it didn't make things easier. It just made people afraid of me. Years went by. I learned to nod along, to smile, to act normal, to swallow the weirdness like a bitter pill. But sometimes, it slipped out anyway. My sister had gone through 2 miscarriages, and one night we were sitting together, back when we were younger and dumber, smoking weed and trying to laugh through the pain. She told me she and her husband were going to try again, and I blurted out, "You don't need to try. You're already pregnant, with twins." She stared at me like I'd cursed her. Not long after, she started bleeding and rushed to the doctor. I was home watching her kids, sick with worry. When she came back, she didn't even say hello. She slapped the paperwork down in front of me and said, "They're fine." She was pregnant, twins, and she looked at me like she didn't know whether to hug me or shove me away. Then there was my therapist. Last year, I finally got brave enough to be honest with someone whose job was literally to listen. I'll call him Dr. Adrian. One session, the noise in my head got so loud I couldn't track what he was saying. I kept looking away, blinking, trying to ground myself. He noticed and asked, "What's going on? You seem distracted." And I said, quietly, "The voices are yelling." He didn't flinch, just asked, calm as anything, "What are they saying?" And I told him. I said, "They're all talking at once, but the clearest thing is, you're going to be in a wreck. It'll happen before our next session. It'll be on a curve or turning somewhere, and you'll get hit by a silver vehicle." 2 weeks later, the day before our next appointment, he texted me a photo, him in the back of an ambulance, and all it said was something like, "You were right." He'd been hit while turning out of a parking lot by a silver car. Our session was supposed to be the next day. After that, I went back to silence again. back to biting my tongue, because I don't want to be right. I want to be wrong. I want to be ordinary. But recently, I opened up to my mom again, just a little, because my sister was pregnant, and this time everyone was excited. They were expecting a baby girl. My mom asked what was bothering me, and I told her I'd had a dream about the birth. I didn't want to say it. I felt stupid, like I was inviting trouble by naming it out loud. But I said it anyway. I told her, there will be complications. The baby will struggle to breathe at first. She'll start coming in the 1 o'clock hour. She'll have a head full of hair, and she'll be about 19 inches long. When the day came, my sister started pushing at 112. Baby's head crowned, and then everything shifted. Nurses got serious. The monitors changed. They told my sister to stop pushing. The cord was wrapped around the baby's neck. More than once. My niece was born with a full head of hair, and she was almost exactly the length I'd said. She stayed in the hospital a few extra days. And my family? They didn't say, "Thank God you warned us," or "Thank you for caring." They said, "Your demons are at it again." So that's the backdrop. That's my life. This strange tightrope between wanting to be understood and wanting to disappear. And then, after I finally talked about all of this more openly, after I admitted out loud that these things happened to me, something new started. And I've always had this thing where I wake up between 2 and 4 a.m., like clockwork. One night, right after I'd shared more than I usually do, I woke up to a sound outside. It reminded me of something I used to hear in a tiny rural town I lived in once, population under 1,000. It was like a coyote, but off. Like the pitch was wrong. Like it didn't belong. I told myself not to spiral. I got up, went about my day, but when I left for work, there was a dog outside, and something else that looked almost like a dog, but not quite. The shape was wrong. The posture was wrong. Like a coyote wearing a dog's skin. When I came home, both animals were still there in the parking lot. I live in a small apartment complex, only a handful of units, mostly adults. Quiet place. I started laundry, made dinner, and the sound came back. So I stepped outside, and those animals were staring straight at my apartment. I took a few steps toward them, and they ran toward the ditch, but then they stopped and looked back at me, like they wanted me to follow. I didn't. I asked a neighbor if they'd seen them. The neighbor blinked and said, "See what animals?" And in that moment, my stomach dropped, because I knew what it felt like to be the only one seeing something. I knew what it meant in my family. I knew what people would say if I pushed it. So I went inside and asked my husband if he'd heard the noise. He said no. But my cat, his name is Jasper, he reacted. Jasper's usually affectionate, sleeps by my pillow, follows me around like a little shadow. But that night he stood guard by the front door for hours, just sitting there, rigid, staring, ears twitching, like something was on the other side and he was daring it to try. When I finally went to bed, he didn't curl up by my head like usual. He sat at the foot of the bed, upright, facing the door, all night, like a sentry. And I'll tell you something about Jasper. He was a stray my aunt fed for 2 years up in the hills. I brought him home to the city, turned him into a house cat, and it took time, but we bonded in a way I can't explain. He feels like a little guardian I didn't ask for but desperately needed. It's 3:42 a.m. as I'm telling you this part, and he finally relaxed. He came up and curled beside my head like he normally does, like he's saying, "Okay, you can breathe now." So that's where I'm at. A lifetime of being told I'm cursed. A lifetime of seeing things I can't prove, knowing things I don't want to know. I don't know if it's trauma. I don't know if it's genetics. I don't know if it's mental illness mixed with coincidence, mixed with pattern recognition. I've heard family stories on my dad's side about people being called witches. I've heard stories on my mom's side about indigenous ancestry and second sight. I don't even know what I believe. What I know is this: I'm tired of being afraid of myself. And I'm tired of being treated like a walking omen. So I keep asking the question I've asked in my quietest moments, and I'm asking it now, straight to you. Am I cursed? So, I guess I should start by telling you this up front. I've been around haunted places basically my entire life. Not like a fun, spooky season kind of haunted. I mean the kind where you grow up learning the difference between a normal creak in the house and the other kind. The one that makes your stomach drop for no logical reason. My family's always been deeply spiritual, the serious kind of spiritual, and for whatever reason that seems to draw things in. Like we're a porch light and they're moths. We actually learned, years back, how to keep most of it at a distance. Nothing dramatic, just specific rituals, a few protective practices, the kind of stuff you don't talk about at parties because it makes everyone go quiet. But anyway, 2 weeks ago, my friend Marina invited me over to see her new apartment. She was sharing it with 3 other women, and she was excited in that bright, proud way people get when they've finally upgraded their space. I didn't want to show up empty-handed, so I grabbed a nice bottle of gin, something with a pretty label, the kind you feel classy setting on a counter. Her building was gorgeous, tall, old, elegant. It had that European vibe, more like Paris than anything else, right in the middle of a neighborhood that wasn't exactly falling apart, but you could feel it slipping. Like the paint was still on the walls, but hope was starting to peel at the edges. The lobby was even prettier than the outside. High ceilings, polished stone, that quiet echo every fancy building has. Marina met me at the entrance, and we got into the elevator together. And listen, this part matters, okay? Because people always assume the feeling shows up right away. We hit the wrong floor by accident. Totally normal mistake. We stepped out, wandered around a hallway for a minute, laughed about it, then got back into the elevator and went to the correct floor. That entire time, I felt fine. Completely fine. I was actually admiring the hallways, the lighting, the old trim, the way the carpet muffled footsteps. Nothing about it screamed bad. But the second the elevator doors opened on her floor, it was like walking into a wave. Not a chill. Not that movie cliche where everything drops 10 degrees. It was heavier than that. The air felt dark, like it had been holding its breath for years. And if you've ever lived somewhere haunted, really haunted, you know what I mean. There's this instant recognition your body does before your mind catches up. Like your nervous system is quietly going, "Oh, this again." I didn't say anything at first. I didn't want to freak her out on the first night in her new place. But when she unlocked her door and we stepped inside, it got worse. The feeling wasn't just in the apartment. It was at the entrance, like something was stationed there, lingering. What made it even stranger was the apartment directly across the hall. Their door had religious writing on it, protective phrases, the kind people put up to keep negative energy away. And I remember staring at it thinking, that should be working. That kind of thing usually creates a boundary. Not perfect, but enough to discourage whatever's roaming around. But for some reason, it wasn't doing anything. And that's where my mind started going places I didn't want it to go. Because years ago, I lived in this high-rise where a man had taken his own life in the building. After that, the atmosphere changed. The kind of presence that moved through that place wasn't angry. It was suffering. Constant, sharp suffering. Like grief with nowhere to land. But here's the awful truth. Most of the time, you can't help. Not without paying for it. It takes something out of you. And unless you're willing to drain yourself completely, you can't just carry them to peace like some kind of holy ambulance. So they linger. And when they linger, they affect everything around them. Sleep, mood, health, the way a room feels. Standing in Marina's entryway, that old memory snapped right into my chest. The presence felt similar. That same, dense, drowning sadness. I remember tensing up instantly, bracing for the kind of torment I'd dealt with for years. Nightmares, waking up exhausted, feeling watched when no one was there. I honestly thought, I need to leave, right now. But it didn't touch me, and that surprised me. Because usually, when something recognizes you, when it realizes you can sense it, that's when it gets bold. Later, I remembered I'd been wearing a protection charm that day. Nothing flashy, just something small, something personal. And I'd been consistent with my prayers lately too, more than usual. Maybe that mattered. Maybe it created a kind of shield. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend I have perfect answers. Anyway, we tried to have a normal night. We poured drinks, we sat around talking, laughing, catching up. And I kept noticing little things. For one, her room was so dark. And I don't mean cozy dim. I mean weirdly dark. The windows faced west, so there should have been warm light, especially in the late afternoon. But it felt like the light didn't fully settle in the room, like it hit the walls and gave up. And when night came, it was pitch black in there, in a way that felt unnatural, like the darkness was thicker than it should have been. As the djinn disappeared and the conversation got softer, Marina started sharing things that had been happening. One roommate woke up with her toes bleeding. No pain, no injury, just blood. Another kept waking up at the same exact time on certain nights, like an alarm clock no one set. They'd hear random noises, soft taps, faint movement, the occasional thud that didn't match anything in the apartment. And I sat there listening, nodding, trying to keep my face calm, but inside I was thinking, yeah, that tracks. I told her, gently, really gently, that if she had the option, she should consider moving. Not because I thought the presence was evil. I didn't get malice from it. What I felt was depression, a kind of crushing sorrow so heavy it spilled into the living space and started bruising everyone who lived there. Like being around someone who's crying quietly in the next room all the time, except you can't reach them, and you can't make it stop. It reminded me of those stories you hear about crying spirits, like the Japanese tales where a ghost isn't there to threaten you, just to mourn. The kind of haunting that doesn't slam doors so much as it drains the color out of your life. That's what it felt like. And honestly, that kind can be the hardest. Because what do you even do with grief that isn't alive anymore, but still won't leave? Okay, so I'm gonna tell you this the same way I'd tell a friend over coffee, because I still don't totally know what to do with it. My husband Evan and I bought our house about 8 years ago. It's one of those one-level brick ranch homes, built in the early 1950s, but it had been fully renovated a few months before we moved in. Fresh everything. New paint, new floors, the whole perfect flip vibe. But here's the thing. Even back then, something felt just a little off. Not scary off, just intriguing. Before we put in an offer, I kept asking our agent, Do they have any photos of what it looked like before the rehab? Like, I needed to know. You know how some flips are basically a disaster with lipstick on it, covering up water damage or mold or, I don't know, a full-on hoarder situation. Our agent said she asked the listing agent and that there were no before pictures at all. Which, maybe that's normal, but it stuck in my head. Still, the location was great, the yard was huge, and we genuinely loved the house. So we went for it and closed fast, about a month later. Move-in day comes. We're hauling boxes in from this rental truck we could only afford for a couple hours. Back then, we were living on a tight budget. Evan was active duty, and we were doing everything ourselves. While we're sweating and dragging furniture, I notice an older couple sitting right in our driveway like they're waiting. The woman, Luce, was in a wheelchair. Her husband, Mark, sat beside her in a folding chair. Sweet-looking, quiet. Mid-70s, maybe. We waved and called out that we'd come introduce ourselves once we returned the truck. But when we got back, they were gone. That night, our very first night in the house, we finally crawled into bed exhausted. And about 20 minutes in, we both hear this deep, booming sound. Not like music exactly, more like thump, 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 thump. Almost like drums. And my first reaction, honestly, I was irritated. I remember whispering, "Of course, we finally buy a home and the neighbors blast sound all night." So I got up, crept toward the kitchen, because that's where it sounded like it was coming from, and the second I stepped out there, it stopped. Dead silent. I stood there for a second, annoyed, then went back to bed. Maybe 5 minutes later, thump, 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 thump. Again. This time Evan was already half asleep, but I got up again. Now it sounded like it was coming from the garage. The door to the garage is off the kitchen, so I opened it, peered into the dark, and it stopped instantly. Again. This happened a couple more times. The last time, I shook Evan awake because it started to mess with my nerves. Like, it wasn't just noise anymore. It was the way it stopped the moment I went toward it, every single time. Eventually, we fell asleep, but I'll be honest, my body didn't fully relax all night. The next day, we're still unpacking, and I see the couple outside. So I walk over and introduce myself properly. Luce is warm and chatty, and Mark is friendly, but quieter. She tells me she grew up in the Philippines, and he's originally from Idaho. One of those met young and stayed together forever love stories. Apparently, they'd been together since they were teenagers, because Mark had met her while he was stationed overseas years ago. We're talking, and I finally ask about the house. And this is where my stomach kind of drops. Luz tells me the previous owner, an older man named Gordon, had died suddenly of a heart attack at a medical office nearby. Like, 1 minute he was fine, and the next, gone. His daughter, Tessa, inherited the house, but she couldn't keep up with the property taxes. She'd only lived here a little under 2 years before selling. And Luce goes, "Oh no, never. But I've been in the garage." I'm like, "Why the garage?" And she says, so casually, like she's telling me what she had for lunch. Because Gordon was a drummer. Jazz drummer. He played in a band and he'd practice in there all the time. Most nights until maybe 9. Sometimes later on weekends. And I just stood there like, are you kidding me? Because that booming we heard the first night, it sounded exactly like drums. And it had sounded like it was coming from the garage. After that, though, nothing happened. Not really. The house just became our house. Life got busy. You settle in, you stop scanning the corners, you know? Until recently. About 3 weeks ago, I was in our bedroom and I saw the closet door move. Not like it shifted a little or maybe the air vent kicked on. I mean, it moved like someone nudged it from the inside. A slow, deliberate glide, just enough to make my brain go cold. I bolted out of the room and called Evan at work like, Please tell me you're about to laugh and say there's a logical reason for this." He tried to calm me down, and when he got home, everything looked totally normal. No drafts, no loose track, nothing obvious. And then, this part. I still feel ridiculous saying out loud, but it happened. Yesterday, I was cleaning the master bathroom, just doing normal, boring chores, and I walked into the bedroom to grab my water bottle, and the bed moved. The left side lifted like someone grabbed the frame and shifted it. Not a tiny shake, not settling. It actually picked up and slid a little. I screamed so loud Evan came running, and he heard it too, the sound of it dragging. He didn't see the lift happen, but he heard me and the movement and came in fast enough to catch the tail end of it. So now I'm sitting here telling you this, trying to be reasonable, trying not to spiral, but also thinking, what am I supposed to do with that? Because I don't feel like I'm being haunted in some dramatic movie way. I don't feel watched. I don't even feel pure fear, exactly. It's more like confusion with a side of dread. Like the house is reminding me it had a whole life before us. And tonight, I'm not sleeping in that room. I'm on the couch, no shame, just me, a blanket, and every light I can justify leaving on. So, I think this was just yesterday, and it kind of shook me in that quiet way that lingers, you know? I've always had this spiritual sensitivity, like I'm tuned in a little too closely to things other people can't quite feel. My mom, Nadia, has told me stories about it since I was little. One of the earliest ones is from when I was a baby. She said I used to sit there, giggling and playing like someone was right in front of me, but there'd be nothing there, just empty air. And the timing of it all made it feel meaningful. I was born right around the time my mom's grandfather passed away, so she always wondered if it was him, like he came by to see me, to say goodbye in his own way before fully leaving. She told me that story when I was about 14, and it stayed with me. It felt like a puzzle piece that explained why I've always felt a little open. When I was a kid, I'd also get these out-of-body moments when I fell asleep. I'd be drifting, and suddenly I could see myself, like I was hovering above my own body, looking down. It didn't even feel scary at the time, more like, oh, this is a thing that happens. Now that I'm older, it's mostly my dreams. But my dreams aren't random. They have places that repeat, like locations on a map I keep returning to. There's one place in particular that feels too familiar. It's this winding path that climbs up into a hill covered in trees, almost like a mountain, but not quite. Everything gets darker as you go up. And the thing is, that hill is never peaceful. Whenever I dream about that hill, it's like danger comes with it automatically. There are wolves sometimes, or this feeling of chaos chasing me and my family, like something is always right behind us. And then, in the most recent dream, I saw La Llorona there, on that same hill, on the way up, toward the house that shows up in that dream world. And what's messing with my head is that I haven't even been thinking about her lately. A while back, maybe like a month or two ago, I saw this video online about her song, but it was in a Nahuatl version, and it was so vivid, it stuck to my brain for a minute. I remember thinking, wow, that's haunting, and then I moved on. I didn't obsess over it. I didn't keep listening to it. If anything, I've been on a totally different vibe. Like the last song I can remember hearing super clearly in a dream was something completely unrelated. Like, "Good luck, babe," which makes zero sense, but dreams do that. I think the last time I even watched anything La Llorona related was months ago when it was spooky season, and I put on a movie expecting it to be amazing. And it wasn't. Like, at all. It felt more like a cheap jump scare thing than the actual folklore, and I remember laughing at how disappointed I was. Then I didn't really think about her again. So why would she show up now? Why would she show up in that place, the hill that always has danger attached to it? And then today, this is the part that made my stomach drop. I started smelling smoke. Just randomly. No obvious reason at first. And of course, I tried to be logical. I'm living in Guatemala right now, and where I am, people set off fireworks a lot. Like, it could absolutely be that. It could be someone cooking. It could be something outside that I didn't notice. But my brain did what it always does when something feels even slightly off. It started connecting dots. I looked it up, and of course there are all these interpretations that say smelling smoke out of nowhere can be a spiritual warning, or a sign, or some kind of message. But still, I can't stop wondering. Should I be worried that I dreamed of La Llorona in a place that already feels dangerous in my dreams? Like, is that a sign that something's circling closer? Or is it just my subconscious borrowing a symbol it already knows will scare me? Because yeah, if I'm being honest, she is one of my favorite folklore figures. So it's not impossible my mind pulled her in without me realizing. But it feels so specific, so placed. Like she wasn't just in the dream. She was waiting in the part of the dream that already carries all the dread. And I don't know. I'm trying to stay rational, but there's this soft, persistent feeling in me that's like, pay attention. So I'm sitting with it, and I guess I'm telling you because I need someone to hear it out loud with me, without instantly laughing it off, but also without feeding the fear. Because right now, I genuinely don't know what it was. A warning? Or just a dream that hit a little too close to home?